Good evening. My name's Doug Kelly, and I'm calling the regular board meeting of November 7th, 2021 of the Ross Valley Sanitary District to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you.
November 17th, Doug.
What did I say?
7th.
Oh,
November 17th. Roll call is Borstein,
Yes, on the 17th.
Gaffney,
Present.
Megs,
Here.
Philip,
Here.
Kelly.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask for approval of the agenda. And does anybody feel, including you, Steve, that we should move things around in order to accommodate any of our guests? Steve,
Yes,
I'll ask you.
Sure, certainly, President Kelly. In response to your inquiry, I would recommend that items 8 and 9 be brought up earlier in the agenda as we have guests that are part of those items.
Do I have any objection to having 8 and 9 moved right after the number 4 committee report out? Do I have a motion for that?
So moved. I
Okay.
moved. 8 and 9 moved after 4.
No, second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Can I have a roll call on that? Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Megs,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So approved. We now have open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future items. This is a time for anybody to address the board on issues not on tonight's agenda. We can't take action, but we can have short discussions and refer matters to the general manager or the clerk to put on a future agenda item. Do we have any public that would like to address the district at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to move to number 4, report out, and I'm going to start with the Finance Committee. Tom, do you want to take that?
Sure. Doug and I met yesterday with the Finance Committee, and the first thing we did is review the interim financial statements, and we're in excellent financial condition, as we all know. We also reviewed the purchase of a new skid steer, and it's a machine, but it's through, the interesting part's through Sourcewell, and we got it for below the list price because this combined purchasing for public agencies, a really good deal for us. We reviewed 2 new consultant proposals, and we have people here the board will discuss. And then we also reviewed the lease agreement, and we had a long discussion about that for 3 new Ford trucks. And so that's it, Doug. Is there anything else?
No, I agree. Just want to let the rest of the board know the issue of the trucks is lease versus buy. And one of the things that we thought about is there's maintenance, and so the maintenance is included in the lease agreement. So we have a 5-year lease on these trucks, and then maybe hopefully in 5 years there'll be sufficiently powered electric vehicles that we might look at in 5 years. So this is another good reason to do a lease at this time. So I'd agree. Michael, do you want to do Central Marin?
Doug, I'm going to let you go for it while I'm finding my notes, and I'll add to it.
Well, then let me do, normally just bring it up. We talked about, well, first off, there's labor negotiations going on in closed sessions, so there's that. We did look at the audited financial statements, which came up absolutely clean, and our audit went very well, and the financials there are very good. We looked at the possibility of doing a pension obligation bond. This went on for some time because the question is, did we do a bond or should we do pay it off the way we're paying ours off. And I mean, I had all these notes about one versus the other. So this came up for a long time. It turns out a pension obligation bond will service over the period $7,888,311. If we paid it off ourselves, it would be $6,236,936 in savings, but we'd have to put out the money, and we haven't got the money budgeted. So to make a long story short, we're not committed to the bonds, but we're not. But we are moving forward on looking at that, and we have another meeting on that probably in February prior to us making any final decision. We did approve procurement for an Inflow and Flowmaster for San Rafael. What that means is we'll now have a much more accurate count and facts on the inflow of San Rafael's collections into Central Marin Sanitation, with the idea that next year we do a new inflow for Ross Valley Sanitary. So this will make the percentages much more accurate. And of course, since we pay CMSA based on that, it's important that we do that. I'm hopeful that when we do that, we'll find that we have enough money into I&I and new capital improvements that our percentage will go down from, typically it's been 50 and it's now hovering around 42, 43, 44. It might go down a bit if we get more accurate readings. So we're hoping about that.
The other side of that, just to be fair, is that if that all works really well with that new measuring equipment, they're going to do the same thing for us. So I'd like to ask Tom, who was on the finance committee where they really looked at that OPEB thing. I know you agreed with what we did, but did you want to add a comment to that?
Well, no, the thing about a pension obligation bond is you're not sure, you're not guaranteed you're going to save money. And it's based on a number of assumptions, just like the pensions are. We don't know how much we're going to owe for pensions. And so, there's risk in it. And there's no, dollar savings. Maybe, Doug, the advantage of making payments is we know what the savings are if we make them.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think we're still considering the pension obligation. That's the best way to look at it. And
that's right.
Yeah.
Good. I'm sorry, Tom. Good.
No, that's good enough.
I was going to say I did ask because they had risk assessments on because the issue is things change and you don't really know. You're right. It's not. And I said, what was the percentage that if we paid it off ourselves, it would be savings? And they hadn't looked into that. So that's fine. So there was an awful lot of that. We went back and forth and eventually I voted for it. But again, we have time again to look at that. Sure. There was also a weekend storm report. As you know, there was an unbelievable amount of rain dropped field. I think it was 12 inches or some ridiculous amount. We did have some SSOs. They were, it's really interesting. I think I'm going to ask the general manager to kind of show us a little bit about, this is on CMSA, but on ours, why that can happen on a storm like this later in the meeting. But anyway, they did very well on the storm. And when I say SSOs, I meant us, not CMSA. So that was about it. Michael, do you want to add?
Yeah, the new covers. As you know, one of the covers a bunch of months ago ripped, and they sent new covers. And believe it or not, somebody goofed, not on CMSA, but they were the wrong size. So now you get into how are we going to resolve this? Are we going to get a new cover, or are they going to change the cables to fit the wrong size covers? And then the storm hit. And when the storm hit, the old covers on the digester that wasn't hurt behaved just fine, with no damage to that one. And with the one with the covers that was the wrong size, there was a little bit of damage to the new cover. And the company said, force majeure, It's not our fault. Well, but you've got a 10-year-old cover over here that did just fine, and your brand new one didn't work. So nah, that won't work. And so they've worked it out, and they're going to send the right size cover, is what we understand now. And that's hurrying up, and hopefully by the end of the year, it'll be installed with the digester going. And we hope that they are also, the manufacturer, going to reimburse us for lost energy and other things that were lost during that time that would have benefited us. So, and the new Jenbacher engine is due to come on in the first quarter of the year. And so hopefully everything will be all fixed up by then. Back to you, Doug.
Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, I'm having a little internet. My visual's off, but that's fine. I'd add one last thing. Voluntarily, we ripped out a unused pipe that crosses Ross Creek in Kentfield. I think it's Kentfield or Ross. I can't remember which. This was huge. It was like 4 feet. That you could see the creek go. It was flat and then 4 feet up. Very bad for fish. We did it voluntarily. It was pulled out just in time for the storm, and it was really good. It just was absolutely fabulous that it was done that way, and good for the fish and good for the neighbors. It might have actually kicked out water there had we not done that. So thank you very much. Pam?
You have pictures on that, right? For the Ross
We do
Creek
have pictures, and I'll
before and after?
I don't have them on me, but I will ask that they be shared with the directors.
And do a short presentation to the Sierra Club on that. That's just outstanding with a public agency. So
Thank you.
Okay.
Will you do North Bay?
What?
Will you do North Bay Watershed?
Yeah, I will for you, Doug.
Thank you.
Okay, I did. Julia, did you get that? Did you get that email I sent you to show the map?
Yes. Would you like me to share the screen now?
That would be lovely. I hope this works. I just want to be really brief. I just want you all to see the map of the North Bay Watershed, and then it's got all the agencies listed. It's grown. It's really an amazing agency. So yeah, if you could share that. Okay. So the red lines are the North Bay Watershed, and then thank you. And then the water delivery infrastructure are the blue, and you can see we have expanded into Napa County, American Canyon, and we actually go all the way around Petaluma through the river, Nevada Creek, Corte Madera, and there's Arroyo, Corte Madera Creek. I did not know on the upper right, you see Napa, you see a blue line, and that's an aqueduct there. Steve, did you know anything about that aqueduct? I didn't even know that was there. So this is all the areas and the leaders that come to these meetings. We share ideas. So there is grant money being used on different projects. That would be another 10 or 15 minutes. But you can see all the agencies to the right of who we impact. And a lot of this is education, not only for adults, but for many schools and many kids. And also now they're starting to look at this sort of interacting now or interfacing with fire agency, because they're feeling that the water and the and fire interact a lot. I mean, you have to have water to put out fires, I imagine, is what they're talking about. So anyway, there's that. And I don't have the draft minutes, but I'll just go over the agenda from the last meeting. And let's see, so they had a guest do a presentation applied on one water policy. It's called the Orange Memorial Park Regional Storm Water Capture Project. It's a young guy. His business is called Lotus Water. It's really cool. He's kind of a new agey engineer, but he did this amazing project for the Bay Area, and I think it's South Bay. a stormwater capture project, very creative, had all kinds of ways, was able to, in the process, remove trash and other things and helps parks with irrigation and recharge the underlying groundwater basin and reduce local flood risk. So that it was just fascinating. He really had many ideas outside the box, and the community supported him. I don't have all the money on that. We had a second presentation by the Sonoma Water and Energy Education Program. Steve and Doug, I sent you the Russian River videos,
Okay.
and they're part of that. And I'm really hoping that we can do something similar, but that's one of their projects. But also, this is, Sonoma Water is really big. It serves 600,000 people. And so he presented a regional education program that they're still continuing on. They do have that education center up at the Russian River. And what else? Most of this was talking about was regional program environmental stewardship. So they actually teach 3 counties, 28 school districts, and 300 schools. And most of their effort is all at water and energy. And then last, we had a go round with different agencies. I don't remember all of them. When I get the, like I said, the draft minutes, I'll send them out. But I do know that Las Colinas had a big spill, I believe, from the storm, and it went into the creek. I think there was some issues. I don't know, probably too much water. And that's all.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move on to number 8, agenda item number 8, consideration of approving and authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a consulting services agreement with Park Engineering in the total amount of $176,958 for construction management services for the RSVD headquarters consolidation project. And before I do that, and I'm going to ask Steve to introduce it, Julia, I'm not getting any video, so I'm going to log out and then log back in. Please let me in. It would be nice.
Sorry, I made a thumbs up, but I just realized that you said you didn't have video. So yes, I will let you into the meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to kick out and go ahead and Tom and Stephen, please intro that item.
Very good. Thank you, President Kelly. I hope you make it back in the meeting. No, I appreciate it. So on this item, this relates to the board's decision to relocate Ross Valley Sanitary District to 1111 Anderson in San Rafael through the purchase of the building and development of plans to remodel a building which is currently used by Comcast Corporation, also a utility like us, but for telecommunications as opposed to sewer service. And they are only using about half of the building space, if that, and they're using parking. And so we're developing and finalizing the lease agreement with Comcast. But meanwhile, we've developed a full set of construction drawings that have gone to the city of San Rafael for a plan check. And we've received comments, they're minor, and we're working through those now. And as we do that, and the timeline for remodeling this building and moving in is starting to shape up as about 1 year from today. The lease that we're contemplating, we have not completed yet, but are on the verge of that, contemplates a 1-year window to get the construction completed. So in order to meet that target, which let's just assume it's November, December next year to complete construction, staff recommends that the board consider hiring a construction manager to assist us in an upcoming bid process for this remodeling project, now that plan check is coming to a close with the city of San Rafael. And the construction manager can assist us with that process and evaluating bids that come in on this public project, as well as the duty of really keeping an eye on the selected contractor to make sure that the materials they use are consistent with the architect's recommendations and that we have best practices in construction of our future facility at 1111 Anderson. So that's one way of introducing the proposal. This is timely because it is in advance of a bidding process. And we're pretty good at sewer systems, but when it comes to building, remodeled headquarters, that's not necessarily our expertise. So we recommended to the board that we do hire a construction manager to assist us with that process. And then I actually want to acknowledge Bill Benedetti and Felicia Newhouse for managing this closely, this process. We did receive 3 proposals that were evaluated, and I would invite either one of you to provide additional comments on that process, Felicia or Phil. But we now have a recommendation to hire Park Engineering for the proposed budget and hourly rate. So Felicia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Steve. I think you covered it very well. As we discussed in the Finance Committee meeting yesterday, we did review 3 qualified construction management firms, and we're very pleased to recommend Jamin Park from Park Engineering for this particular construction management contract. So Phil, if you'd like to talk a little bit about your experience to date with Jamin. I think you're working on another project together and it's going well, I understand.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So Jamin Park Park Engineering has been providing CM services on the 2021 Gravity Sewer Improvements Project, and it's been a fantastic experience to date. The project is moving along smoothly, and Jamin's crew, including himself, the communication is excellent, and the experience that he brings to the table from previous public works projects, looking into vertical projects as well as what we're used to, the underground world, but he has extensive experience in those vertical improvement projects, tenant improvements for City of San Rafael and various other public agencies. So he's going to do a perfect job of blending our experience with public works projects in the underground world, looking at bringing doing a project that is vertical. So yeah, and this it's great working with them. I mean, Jamin Park is I believe you're the owner, is that correct as well? Owner, operator, director, and project manager,
Yeah, that's
Jamin?
correct. I'm the founder and owner of the company.
Right. So it's looking at other proposals from other firms, you're looking at getting maybe a senior project manager, but usually never someone of Jamin's level in this. And he certainly has comparable experience to someone in that higher role. But I don't want to say it's that we're getting a bargain for it, but I feel like it's a good fit for us. So I'm glad to have Jamin here tonight. That's all I have for it.
Yeah, I thank you both, Phil and Felicia, and for your efforts on this. When we had a meeting and reviewed the proposals, I felt there were 3 very qualified candidates. We were fortunate to be able to choose between them. I believe one of them, before we made our decision, they actually contacted us and withdrew their proposal because they've become busy, and that was Kitchell. They contacted us and said, yeah, unfortunately, we don't have enough staff to be able to do this job. Thanks for the opportunity. So, I want the board to know that we had a good selection, but it was narrowing, and there is demand out there. And I think there's a special value on someone like Jamin Park of his senior level, and him making himself available, committing to being there on the job at his level, if the board selects him to be the construction manager for this important project for the district.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Mary, thoughts?
Looks great to me. It's the lowest the lowest hourly. We like we like them, and they don't charge any more for overtime, which I wonder if that's actually legal.
He doesn't charge extra. Well, he's the owner. He doesn't have to, but he also isn't charging for travel.
That's right.
And they did a bunch of stuff for San Rafael, so they know our neighborhoods.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, no, I was very interested that there isn't any charges for travel and overtime, and it's good that we have experience with this firm. So, and I like the lowest cost, of course, but we also want good experience. It's an important project for us. A remodel is difficult. It's, I think, harder even than a, brand new. So, we definitely need the experience.
Thank you. Pam?
Do you want questions now, or are you kind of just?
Questions or comments, whatever you like. Whatever you like,
Okay.
Pam. Floor is yours.
A few things. Is this the last contract that we'll need for Anderson? Or is there, we've done architect. We haven't, and then what else?
Construction people, the actual construction people.
Okay. So I understand
Fritzer, probably, sorry.
we have 3.5 million for this remodel. I don't know where
it's currently budgeted at 2.9 million, but that's a placeholder budget we've had for the last couple of years. Just a quick clarification, Director Meggs.
Okay. Okay, I'm confused. You said it was 3 million construction costs?
We have some preliminary cost estimates that would need refining that are up around 3.5 million that we did discuss. We're not sure that's a firm number. We're going to refine that before we go out to bid as to come up with the engineer's estimate.
Okay. Let's see. So, where am I? Okay. So, the thing I might as well just get it out there. Concerned about is there's no plans here. All it says is a bunch of hours and it's $176,000. I did look at the template, key points, bullet points. I can see some of those would fit, but I got a bit overwhelmed by them. So I do have concerns. There's not a specific plan, and I don't know who the team is, like how many people will be working on this project for this 176,000. And that's one of my questions. Let's see.
Good, Director Meggs is a great question, and we didn't really give Mr. Parker an opportunity to give his comments on what he sees as as the job. He didn't do a presentation yet. I would suggest perhaps maybe Mr. Park could respond to your question.
Okay, I have one more and maybe a third. I looked through.
I would just suggest maybe one at a time so we really answer your questions
Sure.
one by.
Sure.
Jamin, does that sound good?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. So basically the role that I'll be playing is as the construction manager is really, making sure that the project is built according to the plans and specs, making sure that the building permit requirements are met, and ultimately making sure that the final product is such that you can get a certificate of occupancy and actually move it in. So that's kind of my entire role, so whatever it takes to get the project through completion. So the hours that are budgeted is really just an estimate. We're estimating, a set number of hours for the upfront spec preparation and review of the contract documents, assisting with the bidding process and selecting a contractor, and then actually managing the project through construction, and then doing the closeout and certificate of occupancy. It's really a part-time role for me, so there is no staff really working on the project. It's myself. A lot of the building permit inspections are typically done by the building department, so a lot of my work really is more coordination and making sure that the materials going in meets the requirements, having the architect involved to making sure that they're approving any architect required submittals, making sure that the district is happy with the final product. So a lot of times there's things like paint colors, carpet colors, things like that, which the district may have a little more say on, and making sure that everybody's happy with that. So, tenant improvements tend to be a little bit different than, obviously different than underground projects, where we install nice new pipe and then we bury everything so no one can see it. Unfortunately, with tenant improvements, whatever we build, you're going to see. So making sure that everybody's happy with that. And so a lot of the work that I do really is going to be coordination, making sure that it meets the contract requirements, and then making sure that it's approved for final occupancy. So.
Yeah, I see that you have 24 hours a week for 6 months. Is that accurate, or that's a lot of hours?
And that is an estimate. Again, it's the estimate is based on roughly, I had originally said 6 months, but then we're talking about possibly 12 months, because I guess the way the spec is currently written is one section of the work has to be done prior to another section, so which basically extends it out. So the hours are again, is an estimate, depending on whether the contractor's doubling up on crews, if they're working faster or slower. But the total work should be roughly 6 months to possibly a year, depending on how the staging is done. And some of that is still to be determined. We obviously need to get it spec'd out, get it bid out, and then have the contractor give us a schedule on how the work will be done. So, so again, the hours are an estimate. I'm not, you can't look at the total dollars and assume that's what I'm going to charge you. I'm basically charging you on an hourly rate until the work is done. So, but that is sort of a not to exceed dollar amount that I do provide.
Mm-hmm. I looked at all your projects past. Have you done something like this? I see a lot of outdoor projects, but unless I missed it, which I may have.
So, and the San Rafael one may not have all the projects listed, but just to give you sort of a quick rundown on just San Rafael projects that I've worked on. I've worked on the main library, which was a tenant improvement that required hazardous materials removal, replacement of carpet, reconstruction of interior building walls, partition walls, painting, some HVAC work, some electrical work. I also worked on the 2 community centers for City of San Rafael, the main one over on B Street, and the other one, which we always call it Pickleweed, but the one down closer towards Canal. Both of those. Yes. So the smaller community center was really a carpet replacement, repainting, redoing shelving, some interior walls. The larger B Street community center was replacing the flooring, redoing siding, replacing the roof, replacing some interior walls, painting, a little bit of plumbing, some electrical work. Some of the other building type projects that I've worked on with the City of San Rafael, did a little bit of fire station sprinklers and emergency response systems for the main First Street fire station, and a little bit of work on some of the other fire stations. Spent a little bit of time doing HVAC and electrical work at the City Hall, down in the main City Hall as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I do want to bring up, and I could not make all of even though I was on the computer today, something came up, so I missed in the finance about the lease. And I want to talk about the lease because this project is kind of dependent on the lease. I understand that if we have the lease and we don't get the work, the lease is done, and we don't get the work done within a year, we lose half the rent. And if we spread it out even more, we lose more rent. And it sounds like, Mr. Park, that you feel confident that it could be finished within 6 months to a year. Is that correct?
Well, based on the documents that I have seen, yes, but I don't have the full set of plans and specs. So I think that's sort of the start of it. And once we figure out exactly what the scope is, we can estimate how much time that will take. I generally, I guess at least based on what I saw, a year should be plenty of time to complete the work.
Okay. So I need to talk to all of you about how do you feel about spending up to not quite yet, but 2.9 million to 3.5 million on a project that we still can't get in the front door to do our business. And Comcast has strung us out for 2.5 years, I think now. I just want to know how others feel about it. I mean, possibly we could continue as I think Steve's feeling like it's going to be signed in 2 weeks, the lease, or we could approve it based on that when the lease is signed, that the work can begin. But I'm feeling very uncomfortable about letting all this money go out there when we can't get in the front door. So I'm curious what. And I understand the trust and all that in the staff. This is not about that. This is about taxpayers' dollars. If Comcast gets really nasty and wants to sue, I don't know, just all kinds of crazy. Or we can't get the products. I mean, it's difficult if you've been to grocery shopping lately. It's bad to get any products. So I'm curious what other people feel about going ahead with no lease in order, and I'd like to get Andrea's take. And I'm sorry, I guess Michael, you haven't spoke yet, or Doug.
Okay.
Could I say something?
Thank you, Pam. I'm going to address that myself in a moment, but and then I can put it out as a roundtable. But before I do that, Michael, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts, please?
Well, I'm very impressed with Mr. Park's presentation and his estimates and all of that. And this is a project that has a lot of moving parts and a lot of interlocking pieces. I'm not that concerned, to be honest, Director Miggs, because we've actually, through no fault of our own or really anybody's with the pandemic and everything else, and Comcast has been happily paying, or I don't know happily, but they've been paying the full nut for now almost 3 years, which somebody has the number of how much that has saved us so far, because I'm very sure it's up around over $2 million. I'm not positive of that number. Maybe Felicia or Steve knows, but I'm happy, and I'd be fine to move ahead with this, just to keep things moving so that when we get the building permit and when we get the lease, we got everything in place, and let's go. Let's get ourselves in there. I'm not that worried about the other stuff.
Okay, thank you. If both of you will mute, that would be great. So let me give you my thoughts, a couple of things. Pam, to answer your question, the number 2.9 to 3.5 seems high to me, and very high. But I'm not constructing things. I mentioned that in my 30 years with my company, which is kind of merged, but really the original team is still together. We moved from San Francisco to Concord, to a big, huge warehouse, Concord. When the dot bomb happened in 2008, it was 2001. We moved to Kerner, and then 2008 to Pelican, and then this year across the parking lot to Glacier Point. And we were involved in a lot of similar work, not as much as it's going on here. And of course, we're a private company, so we kept the costs down. One of the things I asked the general manager to do is we're ripping down some walls, and there's some sconces on the ceilings that were kind of decorative, and those don't fit into our picture. Those are coming down. So I've asked Steve to put together a bid package that's very careful, that maybe we consider a demo team first, rip down the walls, take down the sconces, rip up the carpeting, and then construction people, because there's a huge difference. And just as an example, in my company, many years ago, we used to actually run low voltage cable. We stopped doing that 20 years ago. And I mentioned to a client the other day, even me personally, I can run your low voltage cable. It'll look great. You'll never see it. It'll be perfect. No problems whatsoever. It's $180 an hour, and I work very meticulously. Would you like to hire me, or would you like the guy for $50 an hour? And he chose the $50 an hour guy. So I don't want us having these high-priced Lombardi type of, or whatever that one that has the commercials, ripping things apart if not necessary. I am concerned about that high cost, and that's one of the things I'd like to see Jamin help us with, is to, I think a little money, not a little money, but, some money on Mr. Park's side can save us a lot of money in the long run. That's my personal view. But yeah, it seems like a lot of money, and I've said that to Steve all along, and I could be wrong. I also agree with you, Pam, on the supply chain. We carpeted, and I brought you to my office and I showed you our new carpeting, which you liked, and it was the squares. You put them down. If you have an ink spill, you rip one square up and you replace it. I like that better than the long carpeting. But at any rate, it was expensive. We had two bids, one for 26 grand and one for 22. I was shocked. And they had trouble. We had certain choices of carpeting because they just were out of some. So it came out great. We love it, and our office looks great. So there may be challenges there. I would say that perhaps we when we put our bids out for the constructions and for the the kitchen materials and all that, that we write in somewhere that they have a deadline. If we're signing a contract with Comcast and we have a deadline, then I don't see why we couldn't put a deadline on our construction people. Steve can address that before I go around again, and I'll let Andrea talk as well. And then I want to completely agree with Michael, and it is a public meeting, but all along, I've been advocating for going extremely meticulously with Comcast. Make sure all the dots are crossed and all the dots are and T's and all that's done. No hurry whatsoever. I think we've done very, very, very well on that. I have no problem with that. It would have been great to get going right away, but we've been paid fully by them. The taxes have been paid fully by them 2 years or 3 years in a row now. So I'm no problem with that. And Steve, no hurry to get this done next week. Just make sure everything's perfectly right. Everything, door colors, get the grass mowed, whatever we need to do. Steve, I'm going to let you address some of those concerns that Pam brought up and the ones that I just brought up.
Doug, I want to point out Tom hasn't had a chance to speak yet as a board member.
Yes, he did.
Did he?
He went right after you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's quite right. Steve?
I'm happy to respond to that. There were a couple things I wrote down, and I think you correctly point out that somebody like Jamin Park can help us structure some of those things, answer some questions about the viability of dividing the public contracts into demo and construction, and provide some insight based on his experience, because it's a reasonable question. And then that's one note, and so I don't have a set answer. I think it's the classic responses. It depends. There's several factors you need to look into to see if you're really going to get a cost benefit, because I remind everyone that with the public contract code, we're always driving competition for low bids. And so contractors have a way of sharpening their pencils on things like demo if they want to win the job in a competitive environment. If it's not as competitive, then it can get thrown in the other direction, and we can get bids that are a lot higher than estimates. So, always caveat that. That's the system that we operate in. But I am interested if James got any thoughts on a project like this and whether demolition as a separate contract and then followed up by construction contract is a cost-effective alternative.
I think, and I'll have to actually kind of go through the quantity of demo versus, because honestly, the amount of demolition is really going to depend on whether you get the good price or not. Is it because a small demolition contractor may be able to do the work, but he may have a more difficult time doing it versus a general contractor who may use his own forces to do demolition really quick and do the cleanup. So depending on the quantity of demolition, I mean, if we were taking down an entire building, I'd say, yeah, that might actually make more sense to just demo an entire building and then bring somebody in to rebuild it. But doing spot demolition is a lot more coordination intensive than just a full-on demolition and a rebuild. So there's probably some added cost in just the coordination itself, where if we do hire a separate demolition contractor for small demolition work and try to have a general contractor build right behind them, and if there's any kind of a delay or a snafu, let's say, for example, the demolition contractor goes in to start doing some demolition and turns out there's some PCB material underneath the tile or something like that. That may actually delay just because all of a sudden we run into a hazardous materials situation where, they may have to, bring in another specialist to take that out, and then the general contractor has to sort of sit and wait. So unless the timing is exactly perfect, where the demolition completes and then the general contractor gets in there to construct, I think the coordination effort is probably a little bit more difficult, especially on a project this size. But otherwise, I mean, I'll definitely take a look at that to see if that is an option that we can do. But again, it's smaller projects tend to come in more expensive unless it's grouped together with a larger project.
Right, and you'd say this is maybe on the smaller side when it comes to demolition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, if it was a full building demolition, I'd say that might be worth it, but just the spot demolitions that we're doing, I don't think it's really worth breaking apart. But again, I'll take a look at it and see if it makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And just, Jamin, just so you understand why my head's coming from, on our newest building, I was the project manager. It was we had to rip down a wall. We had to paint, rip up the carpet, put new carpet down, and paint the warehouse walls and also the floor. And when it came to the demo, it was me and my hardware repair guy. We're like, yeah, we need that wall down. The wall was down in 5 minutes, and boy, did that feel good. Andrea, do you have any thoughts on the contracts on the year? And can we and you'd have to probably coordinate with this with Steve. Yeah, we may sign a contract. Are we signing a contract that says it's done in a year, or are we signing a contract that says construction will start when it starts and it's got to be done in a year? I don't know how that one was done, but any thoughts on those things, and also to put our contractors under the same time frame as we are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I have enough information about the proposed timing of the construction contract, although I will say that this particular contract has flexibility with respect to, at least when this contract could always be amended to reflect how the board wants to move forward and the timing of wanting to move forward. And it's my understanding that the construction contract is still to be executed. So I think we're not entering into this contract provides, as has been discussed, an opportunity to get some assistance moving forward, but doesn't bind the district to any particular timing on construction, unless I'm misunderstanding what the intent is, and maybe Steve can talk a little more about that.
That's right. Andrea was giving you feedback on the proposed contract before you today under consideration.
Yes.
For construction management. And it really is not constrained, as she points out. It's very open-ended, flexible, and adaptable to when we would need services, whether pre-bid, during bid, during construction, and there's no rigid timeline. That's purposeful. We want the maximum flexibility for this type of professional service. But then shifting gears, I think, President Kelly, you were talking about a deadline in the construction contract. So if we're under like an obligation that we're contemplating in the proposed lease to have penalties after, I don't remember the exact details. Felicia can correct me if I'm wrong, but after 12 months, I believe there would be some kind of penalties as far as how much rent we would collect from our tenant, Comcast, because they want to have an incentive in the lease for us to complete the construction in a timely manner so that their operations aren't disrupted unreasonably. And so we're getting to that point in the lease language, and that's moving along fairly, I think. So to answer your question, Doug, yes, we do this all the time. For instance, in the Butterfield contract this summer, we have liquidated damages specified because we really needed to hit a sensitive window when school was out. So we tell the contractor, you have this much contract time, and if you don't complete the work by a certain amount, then we have the authority to issue liquidated damages for delays beyond that point. We don't always exercise that, and we use discretion, but we use it in the contract to create the necessary leverage to meet schedules. And so absolutely, we can work with Jamin, and Phil's here, experience with contracts for public contract code projects, and that's a tool we use on a regular basis.
Thank you. Steve, I wanted to confirm, we're starting this lease and saying that we have 1 year from when we start construction, not 1 year from when we sign the lease. We haven't even put the thing out to bid, much less accepted a bid, much less accepted a date to start. So are we confirming that the lease we're signing with Comcast says we have a year to complete the construction from the day we start the construction? Is that right, or is that wrong?
This has been a negotiation. As you know, it's gone on for some time, and the latest language is not what you stated, in my understanding. Felicia, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The latest language I understand that we are getting prepared to agree to is from the date of the signing of the lease.
I can add something to that. It's there's really two parts to it as well that I think might be worth noting. That Comcast is particularly interested in not the district's improvements on the second floor. Comcast is really only very interested in the tenant improvements for their space on the first floor and the timing of construction completion for that scope of the entire work. So, to be specific, they want that work to be done within 6 months of the start of construction or within 12 months of the execution of the lease, whichever is first. And in our professional consultant's estimation, there wouldn't be any trouble in completing that work within 6 months of construction. It's a relatively, like I said, small amount of work that they're requesting to have done on the first floor, and a little bit of site work for them to access around the side of the building. So again, the timing of the construction is entirely related in the lease to the Comcast's portion of the building that's dedicated to Comcast's use.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Felicia. And I agree, looking at what they wanted to do, I don't see that as being a problem at all. I want to confirm, and please take a look. I would say I'd ask at the end of this for advice for the rest of the board. I want to make sure absolutely positively 100% that lease doesn't say anything about how long our construction takes. Although I'll tell you one thing, we'll be stomping over their heads. And, in my office, upstairs is empty. And it's really nice. It's a beautiful view of the bridge and the bay. And so some of our staff, it's opened, have gone upstairs, and we can hear them walking around. So I know they're not going to be happy, but I want to confirm, if it's not in the lease, thank you very much for telling me that. Please confirm that. And Andrea, you're listening. If you see this lease, please confirm that too. I don't want to get stuck on this and then find out they're mad at us because it took us 8 months to do it, but we started 8 months after we signed a lease with them. That would be bad. Tom, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say, one is, every construction project has potential problems, and we do big money projects every single year. I think I was listening to Pamela, and I think she's a little bit mistaken. We're not going to start until we've gotten a signed lease by the contractor. And yes, we don't have a contract, construction contract now. But I think staff is trying to line up everything they can before, like the design is coming in, the building permit. Maybe we get the building permit approved, and then we have all the specs and we go out for bids. And perhaps we can have the bids prior to signing the contract, the lease contract with Comcast. But the other thing I think that's of concern is the amount of the cost, the dollar estimated cost. And so I think it'd be great for staff to really go over like the engineering estimate, the next one we get with the board. Why is this costing so much? Doug, I don't think it's as easy as you think, but that it's still a lot of money. It's in the range though of dollars per square foot for a remodel. So let's figure out, let's be comfortable with what we're building and how much it's going to cost. And we can talk about ways maybe to save money. I'm not sure about that, but at least we know what we're getting for the amount that it seems like we're going to bid.
You're right, Tom.
We're doing fine.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Wait a minute. Hold on, Pam. Thoughts on the cost in general, Mary? Because you asked that, Pam.
Well, I just wanted to say that this is a small amount of the $11+ million that we spent buying the building. So I guess in my mind, this is just what we got into when we decided to buy the building a long time ago, and we brought the money in from the Comcast lease. So I think it's kind of too late to worry about this. If we want to make it useful for our staff for the long term, then we need to do this. And Pam asked how we felt about the $2 million expense, but given the $11 million we spent on the building, I think to not set it up so that we use it in the most functional manner, it isn't thinking ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Michael, on that issue. Okay. All right. Pam, back to you.
Well, I thought we paid 12 million for the building, 12.4.
Yeah, 12.
And I just want to get clear on some numbers here because what is the total cost? Can anybody tell me of all the remodeling and everything that needs to be done there? If we put aside 2.9 million, then I think that's the expectation. That's number one. Number two, I'm confused now on the lease. So do we have in here that Mr. Park can start working if he gets the contract and the lease is not signed? Is that what we're voting on tonight, or are we voting on Mr. Park can start the project when the lease is signed? That's my second question. And shoot, I'm brain dead now. I don't know what the third was, but those are two things that I'm not clear on. I mean, and could we amend the agenda and say we can award Mr. Park this project, but he can't start until the lease is signed? So those are my three little bugaboos.
Okay. I think we could amend it, but let me, Michael, before you do, let me address that. The scope of work that he's doing is to manage the project. The 99% of what he's going to be doing, in my opinion, and Jamin, please correct me, would be once the project starts. But there's a maybe I'd say 5% is before. You've got to help write with Steve, help write some of these bids. Look at the scope of project, get in there, look at the plans, get into the building, get your thoughts together. So some of this is pre-work. I'm happy with him doing the pre-work as soon as possible so we can get this project off the ground. So I wouldn't support having him wait till the lease is signed, because that would incent Jamin to incent Steve to sign the contract with the tenants. And my feeling is I hope we sign that contract with the tenants in March, just about the time we've got our contract bids all signed. Yeah, I'm fine with how things are going right now, but Michael, I'll take your comment on that.
Well, I think there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of pieces that have to fit together. And just because Mr. Park is helping us out to make sure that what we're asking of the contractor, the general contractor who we eventually build it, make sure we've got those contracts. Like Steve said, we have a lot of experience working underground. We don't have that much experience working above ground, and he does, and doing this kind of work, as he mentioned extensively in the city of San Rafael. So I would have no problem in saying, let's get all as much done up front so that when the city of San Rafael says, okay, here's your permits, when we get the final, based on that, what our construction drawings look like, then we can put it out for bid as soon as possible, so that then, a month later, hopefully we can award it. And if that happens, like what Doug said, whatever the time frame is, whether it's January, February, or March, let's hit the ground running. So all the pieces are in place, and let's go. But I don't see any problem with having Mr. Park start with those tasks, which we would figure out with him that need to be done now.
Thank you. Any other board members before I ask Jamin to take a stab at those, address those issues?
Okay, so this is a question for Andrea. And I think I asked Steve the same question. So what if, Andrea, they refuse to sign the lease and we go on for another 2.5 years like we have? I think there's been a lot of dishonest behavior on their part. I don't trust anything they say. What if this drags out for another blah, blah? What happens to all these bids and consultants and contracts? And, we, the board, are agreeing to spend money without being able to get inside that building to do business. So I just want your opinion on, if you look at the whole picture here.
Let me, before you say, Andrea, we own that building, and we can get in that building any day we want. It's our floor, and we own it. So we can get in it. We've been in it. We have the keys. We've had the keys for 2 years. You can go up there and sit in one of the old offices and do work all day tomorrow if you want. So that's
okay,
just not true.
Doug, you're being, never mind. What I'm saying is, they still have the lease, and they still have whatever they want with that lease. And we have not finalized what we want, what they want, what we agree on. So I'm just putting it out there about the what if, and I think it's fair to ask that question.
Sure.
Well, so I don't have the specifics of the lease in front of me. I suppose that, there's some risk that this district could put some time and energy and expense into some work, and there's a falling apart of the relationship. I would presume that there would be some claim we would have under the lease associated with our inability to do what we want to be able to do. So I don't have a precise answer to exactly what what claims we may have. I can appreciate that remains some uncertainty with respect to the relationship moving forward. I think for purposes of tonight's action, as I noted before, there's a fair amount of flexibility. And so I think this may be less of a specific legal issue and more of a, direction to staff as to the timing and what needs to happen before work starts in earnest. But I'll also say that I'm not currently in on the specifics of the lease conversation. So I don't quite have enough information about exactly where we're at on those negotiations to opine specifically on, where breaches may lie in the event that this district spends money and then is unable to do what it wants to do with the property.
Steve or Felicia?
Okay. Yeah, I've been giving updates regularly, as you might recall, during my verbal reports. I always have an update on the lease negotiations each month. And really the level, everything we do is a matter of risk management, and really staff opinion on where things are is there's a low risk of the lease negotiations being forestalled indefinitely based on our ongoing communication with the tenant. Really the substance of what we're working through is very minor. We have 99.9% agreement on a detailed lease document that we've carefully worked through. So we think the risk is low going forward at this time to go ahead and get everything lined up so that when the clock does start ticking on getting those tenant improvements done that Felicia mentioned, that we've really leveraged, and minimized our risk to the maximum extent. So just, it's a good question about how much risk is there moving forward with the lease not executed. And it's our opinion that the risk is very minor, and that type of, stonewalling at the 11:59 hour is highly unlikely. It's not in the tenant's interest to do that, and we're just working through some minor details. And meanwhile, I think we do believe it makes sense to go on a parallel path to continue to move. We've made substantial progress. As I mentioned at the beginning of this item, we have city approval virtually. The plan check has gone very well, and those are construction documents. That's a design, and that's what we talked about during those tours in October. This is what we are going to build. The city is on board, right? So we're very far along, but we really need this professional help at this time to make sure that the architect drawings have taken constructability into account, and so this is that pivotal point in the process that we're at right now. That we recommend to move forward with the construction manager, and we'll continue to give you updates as we have every month on the status of the lease negotiations. Alicia, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, I'm very confident in the pending execution of the lease, and I would not recommend a construction management contract with Jamin or any other firm if I wasn't confident of that. I think it's strategic in the timing that we employ an owner's representative for construction management just prior to releasing the bid documents, which, as Steve pointed out, the construction documents have been, fully prepared. We, submitted them to the city of San Rafael. Plan check went very well. We're going to be receiving a permit very soon. I do think, Director Meggs, that, your point is well taken. How much money do we want to invest in this building before we have the lease executed? And in my opinion, my recommendation would be you certainly don't want to award a construction contract, of $2.9 million or whatever it is before you've got that lease signed. But you want to have a construction manager at this point in time. It's critical to help with that bid process and to help with the construction documents and getting that process out to bid. We're going to be coming back to the board with a recommendation on a contractor, which is a much bigger investment in part of the process that I think at that point the board would be in. It's a very good position to say, you have that lease signed now, right? And at that point, yes, we really should have the lease signed before we award a construction contract. For the construction manager, I think this is appropriate timing. And that's my opinion and our recommendation and why we brought it to the board tonight.
Okay, I'm going to say one more thing and then I'm done. It's bad business. It's really bad business. And if you get into an eviction or some kind of fight with Comcast, who's got lots of money, and the community sees where we're going without a completed lease, I don't feel really good about it, but it hasn't happened. I understand the pre-planning. Some of it, yes, some of it, no. You can only do so much pre-planning. And I don't know, it's just not good business to me to not have that agreement, finalized. I mean, maybe they need to be told we want, I don't know what's holding it up, but I think it'll be 3 years this April, if I'm not mistaken. So, and I know you're all talking about the rent and all the money you've made, blah, 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 blah. But it's still not right. And two wrongs don't make it right. And so I'll do what I need to do. I'll probably abstain. I would really like an amendment to the motion, maybe that Mr. Park wait until if it's going to be signed in 2 weeks, it should not be an issue. And maybe he could wait after that 2 weeks. I mean, the other issue is if we do have problems and it becomes like a brouhaha with Comcast, then what happens to Mr. Park? And he can't finalize or do his work, then what? So there's all these, I know I'm worrying too much. It's my nature, but I like things to be really clean on any of these legal agreements because I've been in some precarious situations on this board. So thank you.
Okay, let me address some of what you said. I understand your concerns are very valid about these things, but I don't agree that it's bad business. In fact, I think the reverse is true. You do things parallel, so you don't do one thing and then 4 months later you begin something else. Mr. Park is charging us by the hour. His job is to manage the construction. He's not going to bill us a maximum of $176,958 if we haven't even put bids out, because his job is to make sure that the carpet is laid, the network cables are run to all the workstations, that all the workstations have power, that they have furniture. That's the massive part of his job. He can begin his job in parallel by preparing his own thoughts, by looking at the property and doing that. But he's not going to be sending us a bill for $176,958 because almost all of his job is to manage the construction, which hasn't even been put out to bid. So I don't see that's bad, nor do I think it's bad business. Again, I've done this, in a minor way, but we had cabling, we had electrical, we had taking down walls, changing offices, carpeting, paint, the warehouse floor sealed and floor painted and all that. I know what's involved. Yeah, you begin as soon as you can, get your ducks in a row. I had to put all these things out to bid, but in between making sure I put things out to bid and having the paint and carpet guys, there wasn't anything to do. So, I did other stuff. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to say Tom and anybody else. Tom first, and Michael, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree that it's good business to get all of this preliminary work done. And we have a schedule that we've got to live up to. So there's really no advantage to delaying, all the work. We've developed our plans. If we waited to develop our plans, it takes months and months to develop those plans. And then we have a 12-month schedule under the lease. So we're developing the plans, we're hiring hopefully hiring the construction management team. We've applied for the permits. All of these things we have to do, and we are not putting them on our schedule that's subject to penalties. So I think it's good business that we're doing a lot of this prior to signing the lease. The big nut is going to be the construction contract, and we're not going to start that until, of course, we've signed the lease. So I'm prepared to make a motion, but I guess there's more people who want to speak.
Michael had a thought first, though, Tom. I'll take your motion in a minute.
One more point to add to that, in that I also agree that it's good business to have somebody like Mr. Park and his company come in and go over that. We want to find if there are any flaws in any of our thinking with any of this construction that's going to come up. We want to know about them in advance before we break ground. And so hopefully the more minds, and like Mr. Park or whoever we should choose, would be able to come in and help us to find, is there going to be a problem? So I think it's very important to start that as soon as possible so that when we do break, anyway, let me just ask one more question, because Mr. Park said he's going to be charging us by the hour, which is terrific. Is that in the total amount, or is it a not to exceed?
So the budget that's provided is a not to exceed. So
Then
assuming the work gets all completed in 3 months, I mean, my price is going to reflect that.
bonus. So I'm willing to make a motion.
No, hold on, Michael, hold on. Tom had the motion, but before I do that, Julia, I don't know if you got my text. It looks like somebody keeps trying to log in. Are you familiar, or have you seen any indication that somebody's trying to be admitted, or would they just come in automatically?
President Kelly, I did see your text. Thank you. This is an open meeting. There is not a mechanism that I would need to let anyone in if they are having connectivity issues. That seems like a possibility on individual internet, but I haven't received any emails or phone calls to my office phone about any access to the meeting.
Okay, before I take a motion from Tom, I'm going to say that if anybody's trying to get into this meeting and they're having trouble, the call-in phone number is 571-317-3129, and the access code is 354-729-957. Tom, did you have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move that we also.
Should we change one slight thing to not to exceed instead of in the total amount of? Because that's what I just heard Mr. Park say, and I think that would be more clear.
Okay. But of course, we know that if the project goes beyond 6 months,
we'd have to approve it again.
It may have to come back to us probably.
So
is that Mr. Park?
Tom?
What?
Floor is yours.
Okay. Well, I move that we authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a consultant service agreement with Park Engineering in the amount not to exceed of $176,958 for construction management for the RVSD headquarters consolidation project.
Second.
Julia, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Borstein?
Yes.
Gaffney?
Yes.
Meggs? Director Meggs, you're muted.
Abstain.
Scylla?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes, and thank you all very much. It was a very robust discussion, and that's what I like. I think that's what we need to do, so it's good. Thank you very much, Jamin. I look forward to working with you, and please do everything you can. I'm going to take Pam's comment in just 1 second. Everything you can to keep the cost down, and I look forward to this. Pam, you want to say something? Please do.
Yeah, this is about process. There's no way for the community to get into a chat or nothing on this. You know, every public meeting I go to, there's a way to get into the chat of some way, even if you can put in a question on the sidebar. So can we think about that and change that for the future? Thank you.
It's an open meeting, as Julia said. Everybody can attend. And when I, as board president this year, see anybody on this screen who's not known to me, I'll always call for open time. And I'm happy to, I called for open time at the beginning of the meeting. There was nobody there. Everybody on there is available. Anybody can call into this meeting, and anybody can call in by phone, but we still see them.
I'm just saying, Doug, this is the only public meeting that I know of that has this kind of process. That's all I'm saying. It's not.
I don't know what you mean by process.
They don't have a chat. They don't have a way to write a question in on the sidebar.
We have a chat. There's a chat function. I've been using it.
We have a chat box.
It's the little
on the top. It's on the top right, Pam.
Director Meggs, it's the mechanism you use to message me.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that. Maybe you should say that.
The Zoom ones are on the bottom, but we use GoToMeeting, and on GoToMeeting it's on the top.
Okay, that's the issue. All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. No problem whatsoever. And thank you, Julia. Okay, so the motion's been approved. Jamin, did you want to say something before we ask you to stay and watch the entire rest of the meeting?
No, I'm I'm okay. So thank you
That's
very
a
much.
joke.
Looking forward to
We
working
wouldn't
with you.
wish that on anybody.
Hey, the next one's really exciting, Jamin. You may want to sit down on it. Thank you again.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jamin.
All right, now we're going to move on to agenda number 9, consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of legal counsel to approve task order number 4 in the master services agreement with Harrison Association Incorporated for design and engineering services during construction, ESDC, engineering service during construction, for fiscal year 22-23 gravity sewer improvement project number 953 in the amount of $305,363. Steve.
Yes, thank you, President Kelly. Board members, please introduce this item that Phil Benedetti assisted me with, and I'll be handing it over to him shortly. But just as an overview, this proposed design contract is right on this annual cycle that we're on in our capital program to line up the annual summer work for an ongoing commitment to our gravity sewer system that's originally set up on a regular basis through the cease and desist order and the IAMP. And I'll just make a note that this proposed project and its different pieces that are included in the board packet as mapped areas of our sewer system represent the first capital project that implements the new 2021 infrastructure asset management plan that the board's invested in to guide in-house repair commitments, but also capital improvement projects. And it's based on risk. There's a comprehensive and sophisticated risk model that was applied to our entire system. And it's just ranking and prioritizing specific assets, specific pipes, manholes, pump stations, et cetera, based on an analysis of risk. So it's nice to see our plan in action, and that's what you see here is segments of our gravity sewer system that are ranked high in terms of risk, but also based on input from our line maintenance, repair crew, and condition assessor. So their efforts are heard and reflect in the capital program. And then finally, sanitary sewer overflow locations, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later in the board meeting, but that also informs our priorities for capital investment. So this package represents kind of a milestone in our capital program that I wanted to highlight. And with that, I wanted to hand things over to Phil Benedetti to talk about our selecting Harris, working with Harris, and other aspects of the proposal for you. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Steve. So in terms of history working with Harris, personally, we're in the process of wrapping up one of the recent, design projects, working with them on the Butterfield Arroyo Kenrick project, as well as we're wrapping up the 2021 gravity sewer improvements projects that they have been providing. They provided design services for, as well as they continue to provide engineering services during construction. Been working with Kuroshi Rampur as the project manager, and his staff as well have all provided very timely, very responsive support during the construction phase, and during design they were able to meet very I would say rigorous timelines for getting multiple projects out to bid during the the prior to the main bidding season with the Butterfield Arroyo Kenrick project. I think that their ability to deliver on that really is a big part of why we were able to get such a good price on such a good bid from Ranger Pipelines on that project. And also we're able to adapt to the 2021 gravity project, which had somewhat of a dynamic design process, and working in challenging terrain, getting, dealing with delays with getting access to properties for surveys and the difficult easement work. It was great to work with them through that process, and they're definitely up to the task, up to the challenge of this design project for the 22-23 gravity sewer improvements project, which similar terrain, difficult easements, and they have a great understanding of the setting here, both physically and I don't know what the other word would be, but emotionally.
Yeah,
The vibe here in Ross Valley. So they're up to the challenge, and really look forward to working with Kurosh and his team again as we work through this design. And yeah, with that, this is the task order, the fourth task order that we're executing as part of their master services agreement. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Bill. Actually, before we hand it back to the board, I did want to give Kurosh an opportunity to address the board and just give a high-level review of what you see as the opportunities and challenges of the upcoming project. Feel free to refer to any of the existing work you're doing for us.
Yes, thanks, Phil and Steve. Can you guys hear me okay?
No, you're good. We can hear you.
Good. I had some problems earlier with my microphone. Well, yeah, since 2014, we've done over 24 miles of sewer lines for the district. We are very familiar with the environment, with your system, know your standards and requirements, so we can hit the ground running on this project. And we know time is of the essence, especially on this project. I think we want to put it out to bed late summer next year or early spring, so we are well prepared to achieve that goal. As Phil mentioned, it's not really easy. I mean, I have over 33 years of experience working on sewer projects, but working within the district, your district, is pretty challenging because of narrow streets, hilly areas, backyard easements. But as Phil mentioned, we've done it before. We're pretty sure we can easily do it again for this next project.
Well, thank you, Kurosh. President Kelly?
Okay, I'll bring this up to the board. Any thoughts? Michael?
No, since I've been on the board, I know we've done a lot of work with Harris, and I believe that they've always done a terrific job with us. And as Kurosh just said, very familiar with the operating environment, and in all these years, I've not heard a complaint.
Okay.
So I'd be thrilled to do this.
Pam, do you have any thoughts on this? No, thank you. Mary? Mary says no. Okay, Tom.
Yeah, this is a negotiated contract, right? You negotiated a fee.
Yes,
Correct.
And how did that work? How do you negotiate a contract with them? What's the process for our staff?
So, sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry, was there more to your question?
You want me to ask?
The question is, how do you negotiate a fee? Do they submit what they think it's going to be, or do you start out with a proposed fee? How does that work?
So typically they're going to submit their basically their understanding, a level of effort that they're going to need to put in to the project as we have our scope defined at that point. So that includes hours for all their staff involved and then their rates. What I do is I compare their hourly rates to industry standards. We then take a look at hours involved in each task and base that upon my understanding of the design that will be involved. They have a number of subcontractors for utility locating, survey, things like that. Again, similar comparison of rates and things like that. We also work from a budget that, you know, we try to keep all of our design. We have expected ranges as a percentage of construction cost that we are comparing the overall, the total estimate from design in this agreement that we compare this to, and we try our best to work with the consultant to make sure that our understanding matches up with their understanding of the project, and also making sure that that fits in line with expected ranges that we've budgeted for. And yeah.
Did they adjust their hours downward during the negotiation?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. No, so it was a negotiation. That's what I'm, interested in, since we didn't go out for bid. We did a careful something.
Yeah, we keep a spreadsheet of all the capital projects that we've constructed since 2014, and we have an idea of what design, construction management, environmental, permitting costs, these different elements, even project management, when we have someone like Jill Barnes help us. So we have these bins that we keep track of, and so we've got a range based on our experience that we try to target. And so if the proposal comes in a little above the range, we get back to them and talk about, what are areas where we can trim the budget to meet this. What we see is, it's not just industry standard, it's kind of a empirical district specific standard based on our experience.
Okay. Is your name pronounced Karush? How do I pronounce your name, sir?
It's Kurosh, that's correct.
Thank you. Any thoughts on the challenging parts of this upcoming gravity sewer project? What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge that the firms will face? Any thoughts on that?
Probably working in private properties in backyards. That's probably one of the main challenges on this project, as well as identifying the underground utilities. As you may know, the main reason projects of this nature face a lot of change orders is because of underground utilities. And for that reason, we have a sub-consultant on board that goes out there and locates the utilities, using electronic devices. And so that's something that we put a lot of emphasis on. Some consultants, they just rely on facility maps. We don't. We actually cross-reference, cross-check our findings from our utility locator against facility maps, and there is a process of going back and forth to make sure that the underground utilities are located accurately.
Okay.
Those are probably two of the major challenges.
Yeah, and I suspect if you're talking about that being a major problem, then dealing with the neighbors whose backyards you're stomping around on is probably number two.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Okay, any other board questions or thoughts? I'm looking around. Pam, you've got your camera off, so I'm going to ask you verbally, but everyone else can look, nod, whatever. Okay, would somebody make a motion?
Sure. I authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of legal counsel, to execute task order number 4 with Harrison Associates, Inc. in the total amount of $305,363.
I'll second.
Okay, Julia, a roll call.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Megs? Sorry, Dr. Megs, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hilla?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes, and with that, Karush, we have some exciting items coming a truck lease, so I'm sure you're going to want to stick around for that. But you don't have to if you don't want to, but it's a cool agenda item. With that, I'd like to move on, and thank you very much for attending, Karush. I look forward
Sure,
to working.
if you don't mind, I'm going to jump off now, and it was nice meeting.
I'm shocked.
Please do.
Thank you.
Joining us, Karosh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can have a verbal report by the general manager, please.
Why, sure. Let's see. Thank you, President Kelly and board members. For November 17th verbal report from the general manager, I've got 6 things I'd like to cover tonight. The big 3 are the Larkspur Landing EPA and 1111 Anderson, which we kind of covered, and CDO on IAMP status. So first on Larkspur Landing EPA, yes, the EPA is reviewing actively the latest revision of the cleanup report. I asked my consultant what round of comments this is. It's the 5th round of comments, but just like the lease, which is the next item, I have confidence that we're really addressing every last issue that has come up during this process. So I hope by the next board meeting, we'll have it behind us. But given that this is the 5th round of comments, I don't know if there will be a 6th, but I don't think there will be. Number 2, 1111 Anderson. Comcast requested specific revisions to the exhibits to the proposed lease, and our architect is working on these.
What was that?
What's the question?
Could you just be a little expand on that?
They requested specific revisions to the exhibits. The exhibits are, the maps of the property and the designation of what's on there and what access points and the scope of work that has to do with the exhibits. So they're the graphic attachments to the lease.
Okay, and do you see that as being a major hindrance, or is this minor?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's very, very minor. Like I said, we agree on 99.9% of a pretty extensive document, and they've requested specific revisions to the exhibits. And our architect is working on making those changes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and on the cease and desist order, I do have good news, and Phil's still listening. Phil is doing a wonderful job chasing down every last pipe defect that we need to address under the very prescriptive cease and desist order of 2013. There was 605 specific pipe defects that were mandated to be fixed, and on the theme of the last item, some of these are in people's backyards that may or may not want us to be in their backyards, and about 33% of our system is on private property. So you think, well, what's a third of 600? 200 probably were in backyards, and the state mandated us to fix them. So that's why it's taken 9 years or whatever it is, 8 years to try to get every last one of these. Good news is we have one remaining pipe defect to address in this incredibly sprawling list of requirements. And we have a contractor lined up to do the work. So we had a goal when we were getting down to the end in March. We had some 46 of these left, and we had a goal of getting them all done by December 31st. So that's good news. And so we hope to be able to tell you that we have 0 left, maybe in the December board meeting. But we'll see. This one's not easy. It's the opposite of low-hanging fruit. It's the highest one up on the tree. And so we'll tell you the story about it when we have good news to report. We have one remaining project under the cease and desist order. There were capital projects that were mandated. And we have one remaining project, the pump station 142425, right, where we're doing mostly new generators in these pump stations. Well, we've had a delay. You'll recall in a recent board meeting, we awarded the contract, or we approved, you authorized us to approve the contract. And we have not issued the notice to proceed yet because of, supply chain issues that are related to the pandemic. So the strategy here is to delay notice to proceed until we really have a firm grip on a reasonable schedule of implementation, and then we really kick things into action. So we're not having any monetary problem or contract problem. We're working real well with the contractor, getting the submittals in, the process that leads up to construction, we're moving forward, but we have to be strategic on contract time management. So that's going to kick in probably the beginning of next year. And so we would have liked to have had the majority of work done in time for the annual report to the water board, but that's just not going to be possible. And so we won't be able to initiate a process right away next year to rescind or end the cease and desist order until we really have a substantive or notice of completion on this pump station project. So that's where we're at on the cease and desist order. Making really good progress, but not meeting some of our desired timeline goals. There is, interestingly, the NPDES permit, which is CMSA's discharge permit to the Bay, is up for renewal in January of 2023. And you'll recall in 2018, the Ross Valley Sanitary District was named in that permit with a list of obligations that related very strongly to the cease and desist order implementation. Through the negotiations, that was really the requirements that were handed down, more or less just the same list of commitments. Well, now we don't have a cease and desist order list of commitments. And as the NPDES permit is considered for renewal, CMSA has reminded the JPA agencies, the three of us, that we are obligated to provide a new list of commitments for the next 5-year permit. So we've begun work on that to inform the CMSA permit renewal with strategically selected commitments that we know we're going to be able to meet, that will help us meet our mission, our objectives, and implement the infrastructure asset management plan that we just updated. So we'll be working on that in the coming weeks and months as that process gets underway again. So I'll move on to the next item.
Yes, Jim, number 5.
That was number 3. So I've got 4. I could skip 4.
Hold on. I had Larkspur Landing, 1111 Anderson, cease and desist order, and then the CMSA permit. So I thought this was number 5.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Yes, I kind of lumped that in. Sorry, my mistake. The NPDES is kind of related to the
Okay, I see it.
That regulatory stuff, right?
Okay.
The 4th item was the October 24th, 2021 historic storm. There were on that day, it was a Sunday, so it wasn't a business day. There was 12.24 inches of rain that fell in one day in Kentfield. That's over a foot. That is technically a 24-hour, 100-year storm. Moreover, in 12 hours, 9.08 inches fell in Kentfield. That is a 200-year, 12-hour storm. So I guess that means what? The next one's going to come in the year 2221. Maybe not.
How many 100-year storms have we had in the last 20 years?
Okay. All right. So in this storm that happened on Sunday, right now we don't have an operation and maintenance manager, and so Felicia and myself acted as two of us acted as an operation and maintenance manager, and I kept an eye on the smart meters and talking to folks in the field, and Felicia made sure that we had staffing going over a 24-hour period of emergency conditions. We didn't officially declare an emergency because everybody showed up. And so it was a good story of commitment, dedication, responsiveness of our field staff. And we had 4 sanitary sewer overflows. They're described in the monthly metrics report. I expanded the discussion in there, and hopefully you had a chance to look at that a little bit. We can talk about it later in the board agenda. But I'll just say that 2 were large enough, over 50,000 gallon spills. So the 4 overflows all reached surface water because in this historic storm, everything was moved quickly to receiving waters, creeks, and ultimately Corte Madera Creek in the bay. And of the 4, 2 were large enough to require 45-day technical reports because they were over 50,000 gallons. And those reports are due on December 9th. So water quality samplings conducted at both of these sites, and they showed a return to background conditions in about 4 days. The bacteria levels had come down at the discharge site. But the county health has had us continue to do sampling, and that will be part of the technical report. Will be a summary of those water quality samples. And at the time, we didn't really know exactly what happened, but I'll just say, and in the GM bulletin, we reported on this, but we didn't know the cause. And what we've determined in the last week or so is the cause of these 2 larger spills were failed point repairs, which we have never observed before. In response, we've modified our point repair procedure to prevent these from recurring. Both locations were in small diameter pipe and 6-inch diameter pipe, far down in large sewer networks of about 2 miles of sewer, and at locations at about 50 feet above sea level, downstream from steep hillsides. And so they're kind of at a point where there's a hydraulic jump where you have steep flow and then it quickly levels out. And so they're kind of, beyond design pressures for gravity sewers. So we're still doing more investigation to do the technical report, but it's a very novel experience. And it did result in one of those sites in a significant backup event into a building that caused hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. And so our staff did a wonderful job of meeting, the affected homeowners. There was another spill that affected another house. So these are significant events that our staff did a great job in being, the highest customer service. We thank Alan Dylon of Carl Warren for being available right on cue and helping us manage a difficult situation. But these were extraordinary circumstances. Did I mention, the historic storm? We haven't seen that much rain in one day. And we learned some things too, just in terms of there may be limits to what we can do in I&I control. CMSA had their highest instantaneous influent flow in the history of the CMSA plant, 128 million gallons in a day rate. They haven't seen anything close to that. It was under 120 was the previous record. And so it's a very eye-opening event because of, we joke about it, we get all these 200-year storms or whatever. That's climate change. That's just an indication that we have a different set of expectations that we can't rely on historic data to predict. And so that should play a role in informing the EPA and the regional water boards and state water board about feasibility of eliminating blending in treatment plants. I don't think my great-grandchildren will be able to eliminate blending. in treatment plants. So, but we can do things to do our best, you know, within our control to minimize, but we'll never avoid it because of events like this.
Hey, Steve. I was looking at the CMSA flow reports, and it looked like San Rafael's flow during the peak was higher than ours.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, let's come back to this during the metrics report because we can look at that graph together. It's true. I'll just say in the 17-18 metrics report, during wet weather, we were 50% or 51% of the influent flow. That was 4 years ago. Now we're 47%. So instead of 51, we're 47. That's pretty notable. So there's ways we can show progress, but then there's the ultimate never blending. That's tricky, and we'll be talking with the water board during the NPDES permit negotiation, and we'll bring this data to them to give them a reality check on what's possible. I'll just say then also we've since, and Phil's still on, I don't know if he's listening, but and then the scope that you were looking at for Corrosion Harrison Associates design, we're actually actively looking at adding 3 small portions to the scope of that project based on 3 of these 4 SSOs. So there's actually meaningful work we can do that's pretty cost effective, that will be responsive and show corrective action. And then let me put a positive spin on things. These SSOs were really concentrated in certain areas that are, there were novel new things we hadn't seen before, and they were down in the system. You know, they were down in Greenbrae and in Kent Woodlands. They weren't in the upper portions. So nothing in Fairfax or Upper Butterfield, Sleepy Hollow, San Anselmo, Ross. We were watching those smart meters like a hawk, you know, which show water levels in the manholes. And we didn't see anything problematic. You know, the system was working great, getting the sewage down to a certain point, right? But down there in Kentfield where the rain really hit hard, and we still have some capacity and infiltration inflow issues, that's where the problems kind of showed themselves. So I think the overall story is quite good. You know, that you know, if Steve Mixis were here, he'd say, oh yeah, those areas used to be constantly overflowing in events like this, like the San Anselmo Fire Station was a notable overflow point.
And Meadowcraft or Meadowbrook or something there Brookside.
Yeah, up there in Broadmoor and
Yeah.
that area, yes. And it worked like a charm. So, you know, while it's tough to, you know, report on overflow events, I think there's an overall system picture that's favorable. And like I said, 3 out of these 4 sites, we think we have a good capital solution that's not cost prohibitive. So,
Steve,
anyway.
before you move on, can I ask you to briefly explain, we have a repair that's maybe this big. You're saying it got completely blown away by the volume and the pressure of the water, and your solution is?
Yeah, I owe this to Manuel Vigil, or Manny, who's the repair crew chief, and I wasn't even really pressuring him, as it were, on a solution, you know, because we have you know, as part of this analysis, we show pre-storm video. You know, we take regular videos of our condition of our system, so we have a picture of this point repair from a year ago that looks fine. You know, and then we maintain that line, and we have a picture of it after cleaning it. It looks great. But if you look really closely, you see there's a little bit of an edge as you're looking down the pipe that's visible. And, you know, our point repairs are basically fiberglass tubes that are glued to the side of the pipe with epoxy resin. And the manufacturer recommendation has a certain amount of epoxy resin that you add. Manny's solution is so that there's not this little edge of fiberglass that can kind of sometimes show on as the water comes down. We think maybe the water got behind the fiberglass and collapsed it. So the solution is to add a little more epoxy so that there's a squeeze out area that is a smoother transition zone between the existing pipe and the fiberglass shell, so that there's no way for high pressure water to get in behind the fiberglass. So the solution is to change the recipe from the manufacturer's recommendation to go from 2 pounds of epoxy up to 2.5 pounds. It doesn't cost a whole lot, but it has, we've already got some camera footage of what it looks like now, and it's just a smoother transition, we think, that will be resistant to these type of failures. And they're unusual, like we said, we've been doing this for 10 years. We've never seen anything like it, but we've got a solution we think that will help, prevent it from happening again.
And just to clarify, as you explained to me in our meeting, this was at the bottom of a hill at a corner, so the velocity was really there. And you've also said the other thing Manny decided would be a wise thing is to also to expand that. So you're not covering this much space, you're covering a little bit more as well, but to have it smooth so that there's no lip for the water to get under. So thank you very much.
That's right, the lip. You got it.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Doug?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Yeah, Mary.
I was surprised the report didn't include the phrase Mary's bathtub, because pump station 15 go offline and the backup generator didn't come on, which is exactly what happened in December of 2005, which is what resulted in me eventually running for this board. So can you tell us what happened at pump station 15?
Absolutely. Of course, we were going to talk about that in the metrics report.
Oh, pardon me. Okay, sorry.
Forgive me for not touching it, but forgive me. But it was the third tier. This level, very important, problematic as well, but we have a solution lined up. So pump station 15 pumps 2/3 of our flow. It's an incredibly critical piece of infrastructure. Only the force main of the CMSA treatment plant is more important. And they're connected anyway. So it's just part of the system that we live and die by. And we have a recent upgrade that we put in, for VFDs, variable frequency drives. And what happened was when the flows were really cranking and the 3 big pumps got all turned on, there was a break in the circuit because it was too much of an amp draw, we believe. We're still investigating this, and we have a solution. In a couple more weeks, we're going to get an engineer's report on what to do. But we had this failure of, we broke the circuit on PG&E power. The generator went on, and when that 3rd pump came on, it broke the circuit on our generator, our backup power. And that should not happen. We use smart covers as well as pump station alarms to respond, but the Bon Air bridge was out. So we had to go up and around College, down Bon Air to the bike path and limp our way along in the record storm and get to the pump station. And it was quiet as a mouse, and we turned it on, but it had been about 1 hour. And at we have video and other evidence that shows that we had overflow in about 42 or 43 minutes. So we turned it back on, but we lost about 8,500 gallons from the manhole in front of the pump station, as well as down at Barron's and McAllister. And so Mary's bathtub is an indicator, and she did call. She said, "What's going on?" And at that point, I had just seen this blip in the smart meters going up the system, and I texted Noel Sandoval, who was on call and responding to the Kent Woodlands SSO, and I said, "What's going on with pump station 15?" He says, "I'm almost there." And then he got there before 9 o'clock, and so it was, every second counted. We actually responded. Fortunately, he was in the neighborhood and was thinking on his feet, and we got under 10,000 gallon spill when we really did an honest calculation at those 2 overflow points. So it was too close for comfort, and we're getting an engineering report on how we're going to reprogram our system so it doesn't bypass the VFDs under high flow. I'm a little mystified why it was set up that way, I want to have a better explanation for you why it was, but the recommendation is to always go through the variable frequency drives so that we don't have a sudden draw on power that breaks the circuit. So that's where we're at on that. We're still investigating why it failed, but fortunately, it could have been a lot worse, and we had some quick acting staff in the field to make sure that we addressed it very quickly.
Steve, before you go on, Mary, did you have damage?
Not sewage damage. My sump pump in the backyard worked perfectly and pumped the whole time, and water came in. So the flooring I'm sitting on right now is going to get ripped up. Fortunately, I have new flood insurance since the last time I had a claim. So I think I'm going to get a nice new remodel.
That's not the sanitary district, though.
And not the sanitary district. And in fact, the adjuster asked me, has it flooded down here before? And I just started to say, well, one time a bunch of sewage came out of the toilet. And then he's like, no, forget about that. So anyway, I'm in pretty good stead. We built out into, a floodplain, basically. So it's our own darn fault.
Well, I guess let us know. We'll get Alan. Alan moves quickly, right, Felicia? Alan. We'll take care of it.
So the bathtub flood starts backing up with brownish sewage water. Then it went back down. Later on in the day, everything came through. And to my way of thinking, it's possible that it was because pump station 15 wasn't pumping the rainwater, that it takes in, and king tides and everything. As one of the board members in 2005 said to me, that used to be a stream where you're living. So I said, well, thank you. Anyway, I'm in the lowlands.
Good. Well, anyway, there's lots to talk about. We can revisit a little bit, but yeah, I gave you a little more detail maybe than I planned, but it's okay. I welcome the questions, and but I think I'm at the point now, a few weeks later, where we've got a plan of action associated with each of the problem areas. Good. So the last two things, I won't go on, as this will be very brief, but I do want to acknowledge that we've been doing a lot of training lately. There was kind of a delay in our training programs due to COVID and being able to get contractors out, and have people come in person to our office to do training and that sort of thing. So we did an SSO response training. It was already planned anyway, notwithstanding the historic storm, and also some claims training, and just to remind field response staff of how to complete their documentation. And then I participated in my role as part of the acting O&M manager, just making sure that we're getting quality SSO packets together. They look like this. Here's one on my desk now I gotta deal with. And we also did first aid training, CPR training for all staff, office and field staff. And we're doing other required training, such as forklift training, now that these COVID restrictions have been lifted, and we can get caught up on making sure we're meeting those requirements. The last thing I want to mention is recruitments. We'll be interviewing 8 qualified candidates for the O&M manager and O&M superintendent vacant positions, and we'll be doing that in the first week or 2 of December. We also had, for another vacant or soon to be vacant position of finance supervisor, we had 6 qualified applicants that were interviewed, and we hope to come to a decision soon and keeping that position filled. And I just wanted to make the editorial comment that the quality of the applicants has been on the increase. We think this is a good sign of the reputation of the district, and that this is a reputable place to work. And so these are good signals, that we're good feedback, from the vocational world, if you will, that we feel very fortunate to have qualified folks like this interested in working with us and joining our team. And with that, that completes my long GM report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that. I agree that RBSD is getting massively increased reputation, both in public and in private. And I think that's due to your leadership and Felicia's leadership and the rest of the team. And I commend both of you. Also, I'm saying our salaries aren't that bad, are they? You know, every time we have this, nobody's going to come to work for us unless we double our salaries. I'm not so sure that's true.
Well, you said it at the market median, for sanitary district.
Exactly right. But thank you both, Felicia and Steve. Doing a great job. Verbal reports by board members and requests for future addenda items.
I have a question, Doug, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Steve, I think they had a combined meeting at Larkspur Town Hall with the Planning Commission. And I was wondering if you had heard anything from that, because I think they're looking at zoning for our land and making changes on the general plan. Are we keeping in touch with them and feedback? I'm just curious if you know anything. I couldn't make it the meeting.
Yeah, we are keeping in touch with them, and our attorney Riley Hurd has been keeping regular contact with their planning division about the process with the general plan. But we haven't been attending their public meetings. We're always open and available to doing that, but we did.
Steve, your audio is coming and going.
I didn't hear anything specific that the district really would be advised to attend, but we welcome the opportunity to do so if it makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Pam, do you have anything on verbal report by board members or a future agenda item request?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure this out right now. It looks like in the chat that people are emailing you and making comments to you, Doug, about me. There's a that you sent.
No, there was a question that item was going on too long.
I don't know if it was a question, but it's feeling like it's a Brown Act thing. So maybe we all need to revisit the Brown Act together as a group. I think if somebody has an issue that the agenda item is going on too long, perhaps they can raise their hand and say, hey, could we kind of wrap this up, rather than, because I think it's getting into 3 members at that point. And maybe Andrea, you don't have to say anything now, but I just don't think it's the way to do it. I think it is the Brown Act, but that's my request. And I'm sorry, Doug, you.
No, that's fine. No, it's fine.
Okay.
I think what you'll notice is I said I wanted you to fully vet and have the opportunity to speak, and that's what happened.
Okay, Andrea, I think this is a Brown Act violation, and I'd like to discuss it. And Doug, if you want to meet with me and Andrea, that's great. But I think the board itself, they need to kind of be adults here and say to Doug, who's the chair, this item's going on too long. Can we get finalized, rather than emailing him separately or in a chat and then him emailing back? And I don't know. It's just anyway, that's it. I don't want to say any more.
I'd be happy to weigh in if Doug, it would be helpful.
Please do.
I mean, to the extent that there are text or private chats happening between and among board members during a board meeting, that could be a Brown Act violation, depending on the topic. Not entirely sure whether a comment on the process of the meeting is directly a Brown Act violation, but it certainly is something to be avoided sort of behind the scenes during a meeting.
Okay. Thank you. And Pam, it's fine. Thank you for bringing it up. Do we have any other comments from board members or requests for future agenda items?
No.
Michael. Mary. I would add one. I don't remember. Julia, you may know this. Did we specifically address on this board as a policy that moving forward after we have in-person meetings that we continue to have, I'll use the word Zoom, but we use GoToMeetings. Do you remember, did we have that on an agenda item that we would or would not continue to have that? Was that something we discussed?
Well, I think this is also a conversation to, if Andrea wants to weigh in, based on the most recent legislation published. There is a recommendation about how the public can attend meetings while we continue to do them virtually. But I think it really depends on the AV and technology capabilities of the meeting space that we have. If we're able to do a hybrid version where people can attend virtually to an in-person meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Steve, I'd like to talk about putting that on a future agenda item. At CMSA, we agreed that we would continue to have Zoom meetings moving forward. The Board of Supervisors did the same. I think San Rafael did the same. I just like to put it on an agenda item at some point.
Well, isn't it on the agenda, 7C?
We have to pass a resolution. We haven't done the calendar yet.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
We do have to pass that to continue to do that. No, I'm saying I'd like to put an agenda item on that says when we go back to fully, completely in-person live meetings, that we would like to consider, should we continue to have virtual meetings as well for public that would not want to attend in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. That's the request for agenda item. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to the consent calendar. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. The consent calendar may include resolutions. Therefore, the motion, second, and vote will also be applicable to the resolutions and recorded accordingly. There'll be no separate discussions of these items unless requested by a member of the board or the public prior to the time the board votes on the meeting to adopt. Again, I'm seeing no members of the board. Is there anything anybody would like to pull from the consent calendar? Seeing none, would I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move, I move adoption of the consent calendar.
Okay.
Second.
All right, Julie, can I have a roll call?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meggs. I'm sorry, Director.
You're on mute, Pam.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 10, considering of authorization the general upon review and approval of council to approve a lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management for 3 2022 Ford 350 trucks and 2 additional budget vehicles not to exceed the amount of $200,000 for a 5-year term. And before I turn it over to the general manager, I'd like to point out I was in remiss in not asking the board to move this item up earlier on the agenda. Seeing staff on an item, I would prefer in the future that I catch that and we move that up on the agenda as well, because Courtney Buell is going to help us with this. Now I'll turn it over to the general manager.
Thank you, President Kelly. And yes, we certainly could have moved this up before the verbal report from the general manager, but it's okay because I actually glad Courtney had the pleasure of seeing a full board meeting and all of the twists and turns. So it was a staff training opportunity, but in the future we'll consider that. Thanks. I'll just briefly introduce the item. You might recall in August of last year, I think even going a year before that, I'm sorry, 2020, we originally had a board item to adopt leasing a van instead of buying a new one. We had an Astro van that was past its useful life. Since then, we saw how the benefits of leasing versus buying, and we can go into that in a little more detail later, and enhanced our relationship with Enterprise to look at our whole fleet and do an analysis of what vehicles make sense to lease instead of purchase as we have to replace them. They get a lot of wear and tear, and we have a lot of expenses these days maintaining our pickup trucks, going to Diego truck repair. We have, if you look at the check register, it's a regular item for doing maintenance. And so the board has already deliberated on the merits of leasing these vehicles instead of buying them. And now this is the latest wave of proposals. And there is a $200,000 budget this year that you adopted in June for this purpose. And we, thanks to the efforts of Courtney and Felicia, we've got some updated estimates for cost to do specific vehicle replacement. And we were asking for authorization for the full amount of the budgeted amount so that we could have the flexibility to add 1 or 2 additional vehicles this fiscal year. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Felicia and or Courtney to provide a little more specific detail of the proposal before the board.
Thank you, Steve. So yeah, I think you covered all of the highlights in the staff report. I'd like to let the board know that the Finance Committee yesterday did have a couple of questions that Courtney and I had an opportunity to look into in the intervening time. So Courtney, if you'd like to go ahead and report out on the mileage program, as well as the insurance question, which were brought up yesterday by the board. And then I would say that we're available to answer any questions with regards to the leasing program as Steve has already described. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve and Felicia, and it is exciting to be here. Definitely good staff training to be a part of a full board meeting. So I had the pleasure to help prepare this report, and yesterday one question that came up about this lease agreement, because most people who are familiar with leases know that sometimes there's mileage restrictions, and so to clarify, with this open-end equity lease, there's no mileage restriction for our vehicles, so we can put unlimited mileage on the vehicles. And on the lease itself, it does mention mileage, kind of the estimation of the mileage is for the maintenance program. So if we add maintenance to these vehicles at the end of the estimation, so for example, if the lease estimates 10,000 miles per year, after 5 years, 50,000 miles is what's expected on the vehicle when we want to return it and swap it for a new lease. And so if there's any mileage over that 50,000, then the charge will be $0.04 towards each mile. And so, for example, if it went over 10,000 miles, we would owe $400 as maintenance on that vehicle. So it's just regarding maintenance fee, but besides that, we can put any miles on it. And so that's something to consider with the lease agreement. Additionally, we had a question come up about if insurance is different, the premium is different on a leased vehicle versus.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Courtney?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you. Let's just go back to that first part, because I want to take them one time. What is your understanding about mileage and our use of mileage, and what do you think from what you've learned that we'll go over? How much might we go over, or what do you know about that?
Well, my only frame of reference for these 3 vehicles that we currently have that's written on the staff report, the 250 trucks that are being replaced, the year of those vehicles is 2011, and the mileage kind of ranges from 30,000 to one vehicle has 200,000 miles put on it. So I think that there is a wide range here, but I'm kind of thinking that that is 10 years of time. And so 5 years seems to me to be 50,000 miles seems like an appropriate estimation. The one vehicle that, if you look at the report, that needs replacing, that has almost 200,000 miles, that is an on-call vehicle. So that vehicle does go home with field staff when they are on call. So that's why there's higher mileage on that vehicle. It's PT04.
Can we, and this is a question for Steve, can we monitor this on these vehicles if we approve this, please, so that the on-call vehicle maybe is swapped around, because we have one that's only 28,000. And again, Courtney makes the point, these are 10-year-old vehicles, so it's not the same mileage that we'd anticipate. But moving forward, if we see ones moving up and it's always the on-call, and let me clarify, the on-call vehicle, that doesn't stick with the same person, does it? No, it doesn't. Felicia's not shaking her head. No. So then why wouldn't we? Right. So,
however, the point of information that I would make to your inquiry, President Kelly, is that the on-call vehicle is specifically outfitted for on-call work.
Okay.
So that's why it's the on-call vehicle. Yeah.
And when you say specifically outfitted, is that things put in the vehicle? I'm not going to say trunk, but tool bed, or is this because it's completely differently set up and it has different equipment, hard screwed in, if you will?
Yeah, I wouldn't presume to know all of the details about the specific outfit of the truck, only to say that it is specifically outfitted for on-call. So I think,
and let's just, I'd ask that
certainly,
look into that and monitor it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I have a question. So in essence, if we go over 10,000 miles, there is a 4-cent per mile charge.
0.04.
4 cents of a cent.
No, it isn't. It's 4 cents a mile.
Is it?
It's a dollar sign 0.04.
Okay.
So 4 cents a mile. So, well, okay. In other words, it goes to maintenance. It doesn't matter what it goes to. We have to pay 4 cents a mile.
Mm-hmm.
10,000.
Yeah. Okay. That's the information you asked for. So if we do this, I think we'd need to really monitor that, Steve and Felicia. And there might be nothing we can do about it, but maybe at some point in 3 years, we decide we need one more on-call vehicle. I don't know, it was a good point. I'm glad it was raised by somebody at the financial meeting. It was a brilliant question. Whoever asked it.
I have a question.
That was me.
Is it so that up until last year we had people who were required to go around and do pump station checks? Was that the on-call vehicle that did that?
I don't.
No. Okay.
I don't know.
I was thinking
don't
because
know.
we don't have that anymore.
No.
And so maybe the mileage on the on-call vehicle will just be a lot less than it ever has been. But no.
Possibly. I would also add that at 200,000 miles divided by 10 years is 20,000 miles. So if that's 10,000 miles over the 10,000 mile a year limit, that's just an additional $400 towards maintenance, which seems reasonable to me.
That's a very good point, Felicia. I agree with you. That's, you put it that way, it's not that much. Too bad they don't give us credit if we turn it in 15,000 miles under.
Well, they do in the sense that the vehicle then has a higher value.
Good point. Thank you. If you could look into that, Courtney, you've been on this project. If you could look into that and just give a report back to Steve or Felicia onto what's the difference between the on-call vehicle. I mean, because I'm just thinking again in my own life, an on-call vehicle in my company might be one that has certain equipment in the trunk, but it's not functionally different. It's not, it doesn't have a computer plugged into the front, like the police officers' cars do. I'd like to know if there's a difference. I don't think we need to know tonight. I think it would be nice to look into that. And you can continue with your report. I just want to do the.
Yeah, it'd be $3,000 for that.
Yeah.
Because
I think there's a sensitivity analysis here that you have to do, right? If it's $400 for being 10,000 over, and if you use this empirical information, 200,000 miles, so it's 20,000 a year instead of 10,000, you're doubling it, right? So you're in 5 years, you're 50,000 over. And so just multiply 400 times 5 and you get 2,000. We're talking about $2,000.
Yeah.
Is it worth tracking and changing equipment from an on-call vehicle, to save $2,000 over 5 years?
If you're taking and again, I'm thinking about F-150s or 250s that have that big silver thing.
I know.
If you're taking that off on December 31st and throwing it in another truck, yeah, why not?
Save $2,000 in 5 years. So we're going to save $400 on a $20 million annual budget. You think?
I get it, but we try and save money where we can. Let's find out what's the difference. Steve, why don't we find out what the on-call vehicle is?
Okay, we will, but I'm just giving you a preview of what you're likely to hear.
Okay, all right. Love the preview. Okay, I like to know the answers to these questions. That's why it was raised in the first place. Okay, Courtney, you were on to the insurance.
Yeah, so for the insurance, there's no difference for the premium versus vehicles we own outright versus leased.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything else, Courtney, or shall I open up to the board?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Tom?
Well, my comments are that it's really, in essence, by leasing, what we discussed in finance is that we're basically having new vehicles all the time. We have no more than 5-year-old vehicles. And, we've seen Diego repair, if you look at the checkbook, there are big repairs there all the time. Just about every month we have something in getting a couple $1,000 worth. So we're getting new vehicles, and 2, we're getting the repairs and maintenance done. And also the lease company kind of monitors everything. So it probably saves us staff time with when is the vehicle, who knows what's wrong with it, but the leasing company kind of takes care of the required maintenance. So there's a lot of advantages to this. I'm kind of surprised it's less expensive. I think the calculation on that is complicated, but even if it was a little bit more expensive, I think it'd be worth it.
Okay. And Tom, we also talked about, if you want to tell people the issue of in 5 years, maybe there's an electric vehicle.
Well, that was your idea, and I think it's a good one. We're leaders in a lot of things, and maybe that electric truck company that's capitalization is more than GM and Ford, and they've made 140 trucks. Well, maybe what's going to happen, I think, is that GM and Ford are going to start mass producing electric trucks. And in 5 years, we might be leasing electric trucks. We don't have to buy them. We might lease them.
Yeah. Thank you. Mary? Nope.
Fine with it.
Pam?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
I listened to the finance committee yesterday. It seemed to me that leasing would be a good thing to do for the district. So I'm in favor of doing that and keeping all of our, instead of keeping trucks that we have to keep track of back from 2011, I think Courtney said, every 5 years we'll be rotating through the trucks. We'll have a newer fleet for less cost, according to the thing. So it makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, do you have a motion?
Sure. I move, hang on one second, that we authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve a lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management for 3 2022 Ford F-350 trucks and 2 additional budgeted vehicles not to exceed the amount of $200,000 for a 5-year term.
Second?
Thank you, Mary. Can I have a roll call, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Eggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
You're on mute still, Mary.
Yes.
Thank you.
Kelly.
Yes.
I apologize, members of the board and staff. I have a personal conflict that I need to sign off the meeting for. So I'm going to make AGM Newhouse the organizer of this meeting, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
I'd like to point out for the board that we knew this was coming. This is not a surprise. So thank you for advising us of that in advance, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night, Julia.
you.
And thank you very much, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. Yes.
Thank you, guys. I'm
We'll
gonna
see you at the
take
next
off
meeting.
too. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, you can stick around for the other stuff. I'd like to move on to number 11, consideration of adopting the year-end capital report, of accepting the year-end capital report for fiscal year 2021. That is number 11.
Yeah, thank you, President Kelly. This is that time of year where we summarize the capital program financials and the mileage tally for the previous fiscal year. And it's a little confusing sometimes because this is a snapshot in time that ends at June 30th. So there's been work since that time. There's miles in the ground and money spent and all that. But this captures everything up to that point in time, and it makes for a facilitated review of going back in time as well, to compare to previous reports. And so this, as we mentioned in the staff report, is the 4th edition of this. It's the companion report with our metrics report that we get out about a month sooner. And so what's in here, what's interesting about this report is, the IAMP from the cease and desist order was a 7-year plan. And there's one figure in here that's worth looking at, and I could even bring up on the screen, but if you have it in the item in front of you, the paper version, or you can follow along with me on page 11 of the report, or board packet page 113. And this is figure 1, and this is right out of the original 2013 plan, and an assumed burn rate, of funds and putting miles of pipe in the ground that were fairly linear. But looking at 7 years that would end a year ago in June 2020. And the commitment here was to spend 95.7 million and put approximately 32.3 miles of rehabilitated pipe in the ground through capital projects. That doesn't count all of the in-house repairs and everything we're doing. And then if you flip the page, you get figure 2, which is the actuals, and it's not so linear. It's a little bit of on a money standpoint, it was kind of an S curve where it was a slow start and then got going pretty accelerated fashion between 2016 and 2019, and has started to taper off a little bit. But we've exceeded, and also what's different about this figure 2 compared to figure 1 is it's an 8-year graph. Figure 1 was a 7-year plan, and figure 2 is the 8-year actuals. And so a year ago we were explaining we're at the end of the 7th year, and we still have a little work to do, but it's in progress. It's under contract. And it's a similar theme we find ourselves in what I said earlier in this meeting on the cease and desist order. We had the deadline, it was in 2021. These projects are under contract. There's supply chain issues with the pump station project, and it's just a challenge to nail these kind of deadlines doing capital projects for one reason or another. It's hard to get going. And you can even see Ross Valley Sanitary District, then known as SD1, had a hard time getting started with this ambitious program in the first 4 years, but it really sped up, and there was good catch up. And you see the mileage is a little, really at the end of last year got really close to 32 miles at 28.82. This last year, we've been diligent in getting some challenging areas, hard places to work, like Shady Lane and Ross, and part of the, not the Butterfield, but the Laurel Grove. That's painstaking, plodding work, but really important capital work. That I always like to remind folks that Laurel Grove project, we estimate that sewer was laid in the year 1900. based on when that development went in. And it's fascinating to think that that was 1900 is the age of the sewer that we replaced. And it functioned great, by the way, in that big storm. We have a smart cover right there, and it all moves through beautifully. It's not too much surcharge, except when that pump station went down. We saw a little bit of a blip, a little bit of a backup, but we got rid of that. So at any rate, as the narrative states, yes, we've exceeded our 95 million. That was estimated, in 2013. We're up at about 109 million. And the current projects underway do get us over the original mileage commitment. So we're on track and about a year late. It's the story of the capital project, capital program summaries. And then this provides a documentation of specific capital projects, why they might not have been built. And also I have narrative in this report about the 2021 IAMP and how we're now going to shift into implementation of this new infrastructure asset management plan in the coming year. And so the narrative of next year's report won't be a rehash of all the commitments with the cease and desist order and IAMP. It will really be more forward-looking, and what I describe in the report as a pay-go capital program. That we are designing our budget to fit the sewer rates that you adopted and the plan that you set forth on what's affordable to the ratepayers. And so we're going to do our level best to negotiate with the water board about what we think we have the capacity to do from a financial standpoint, because we feel like we've met these aggressive aggressive commitments with the cease and desist order, and now it's time for us to settle into a more affordable, sustainable collection system capital program. So those are some of the highlights, and there's a lot of detail in here about specific projects, specific consultants that we've paid, to over the course of this fiscal year that we're talking about that ended in June. And I'm interested in any insights or comments that you may have on the report. Thank you.
Okay, Pam, can I start with you? Do you have any thoughts on this report?
I have a couple.
Okay.
I thought Baywood was really pricey. Is that because it's way out there and it's a canyon? Or what's their problem?
Yeah, good. Yeah, this is on page 21 of 35. Part of the capital program is that we're doing this kind of cumulative, that term, right? We just, as each year goes by, we're just keeping adding to the table. So this table does go back in time. You see the column that says month, and so if we're talking about Baywood, the months where that work was done was in 2017 to 2018, and this was a very difficult access site. It was on private property, I believe, and this is when we actually set up a master services agreement with a consulting firm because it was an on-call type situation. It was an emergency response. So it was a very challenging project. It was a little before I got here, but I heard stories, that it was very, very hard work, and I think it was very expensive.
Pardon me, it was a creek crossing, right? So
Yes.
that's like just the the most important and probably most difficult and expensive work we can do.
It really is, it's painstaking. And then the requirements that we have in emergency, even in emergency situation, working with the regulatory agencies, they're going to have requirements that are costly, in terms of mitigation. But yeah, it's just, there was a logistical challenge. And it ended up being very expensive, right? It really jumps off the page here in terms of as far as emergency costs. I guess, for what it's worth, we do budget $200,000 to $250,000 a year for these type of emergencies. And except for Baywood, we never, in this 8 or 9 year history, we haven't exceeded that budgeted amount.
Okay. Then I had one quick question on page 9. I'm not clear on a project that says this is midway, and I'm focused on Fairfax, of course. When you say postponed but capacity impacts not observed, I don't quite understand that statement. It's midway down.
Yeah.
What does capacity impacts not observed and postponed? Do you change your mind on the project? Is that what happened?
Yes, it's postponed. We haven't deleted it, but we're not seeing the capacity impacts. And again, on this recent storm, which was pretty worst case, but it wasn't necessarily total worst case because it's early in the season, right? So I'm refraining from saying we know, because if there's a wet year and then you get a big storm like that on top of, a higher groundwater table, maybe we would observe capacity impacts. Also, you might recall in, I think it was July, we adopted the contract for the flow monitoring and modeling for this winter, and it's underway. We're getting ready to mobilize, and we're going to be evaluating this project, the ones in this list here, not only the Spruce Park Merwin Broadway project, but the Westbury Hawthorne and the Upper Butterfield. These are 3 capacity projects recommended on an analysis from the 2000s. This is old data.
Yeah.
We're going to get new data to see if all of our work on point repairs and lateral improvements, will the flow monitoring show we don't have as high a peak in these areas as predicted back in 2006. That's where this analysis came from, that the Water Board put as requirements for projects.
Oh, really?
And the Water Board is receptive to our strategy that we wrote to them about in March of this year, where we said, we're not going to commit to build these projects at this time for these reasons. We haven't observed the impacts that were predicted. And we commit to doing the flow monitoring and the modeling to prove out whether we need to do these projects or not. So for now, we call them postponed. And we're going to use this updated model and monitoring to help us decide and make the case to the Water Board that we can shelve the idea, to say that we don't need to do that. I'm a little worried about the Spruce Park Merwin Broadway project in Fairfax. Just a little anxious about going forward without a careful study because it's very disruptive. What would be done? It would be a tunneling project.
Oh God.
From Merwin through that hill over down Broadway. It would disrupt downtown significantly. So we want to be very careful about before we rush into something like that. And the good news is so far we haven't observed the predicted overflows that the model predicted. That was the basis for the Water Board requiring the district to build these projects. So I wish it was simpler, but this is the type of negotiation we have to do. It's an aftermath of a very rigid enforcement action this district had to endure.
Yeah, we're being watched.
So this is
I got to hear the
cleanup. This is sort of the cleanup at the end. Yeah.
I got to hear the siren downtown because the creek crested, I guess is the right word. But that's great that there wasn't any bad anything. It's amazing. Maybe I always wonder about cleaning out those drains and stuff. Makes an impact, I would think. And I know the fire department's really pushing that people clean up all their debris and leaves and all that stuff. So I'm wondering if that had something to do with it. Anyway, great report, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Michael.
Thank you for the report, staff. And it was lovely. And let's just keep up the good work. That's what I have to say.
Mary.
Looks great to me. Nice retrospective. I've been here the whole time now.
Tom?
Take credit for all those achievements.
Only at election time.
I think it's a terrific report, and I was drawn to the emergency projects table as well. I think that's quite interesting, and I like the way you always do a capital plan optimistically, and it doesn't happen as fast as you'd like it, but we really did catch up, and that was pretty good. I remember early on when I was just on the board, we had $10 million of project expenditures estimated, and we do 1.2 million, basically for just studies. That's about all we got done for about the first 3 years. And then boom, we started really going like mad. So it's a great report. This goes to the regional board or the state board too?
Well, we put it on our web, it's on the home page, and we let them know about it. I can do that. I think we're going to be doing some transmittal of annual reports in the next 2 months, and we can make these attachments as well.
A good idea. I think it's excellent.
Thanks, Tom.
The report's excellent, and the amount of work is excellent.
Yep, it's like, it's with 8 years, there are a lot of people who contributed to this.
Doug, is it appropriate I make a motion?
Now, let me speak for just a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So, first off, thank you, Tom. I think that's a good idea for you to suggest that Steve send it on to the Regional Water Board, and I think you should, Steve. So that's a good suggestion. I was drawn to Appendix A. There's a couple of ongoing, but completed. And then we have the pump station projects where we have 3 completed, 1 in design, 1 in future, and a couple in planning. And then of course, the last one, the Larkspur excavation. So I liked Addendum A the best. So thank you for that. And yes, I agree with what Tom said. An awful lot of work was put into this. It's a great report. Michael, did you have something to say?
No, I was just saying if we're ready for a motion,
There you go.
I move that we accept the year-end capital report for fiscal year 2020-21. Come on,
I'm waiting for a second.
Come on.
I seconded.
Mary, thank you,
Yes.
Mary. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please? Felicia?
Yes, thank you. Director Borstein,
Yes, please.
Director Meggs,
Yes.
Director Gaffney,
Yes.
Director Silla,
Yes.
President Kelly.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'd like to go on to agenda item number 12, informational items, monthly operations and maintenance metrics report for the month of October. Steve?
Great. Yes, I would just point out a couple highlights. We covered a lot of the ground on the verbal report, so we don't have to retread too much on the SSOs. But I want to start out with drawing attention to the recycled water. We have a new format for the monthly report that we came up with based on our annual report format. And so
Page 8 of 9?
Yeah, page 7 of 8 is what I have. Yeah, page 8 of 9 as well, but you start on page 7 of 8. And Marin Municipal Water District bills every other month. So we don't get potable water data except for 2-month intervals. So we present the information as July to August and September to October. So you see the actual gallons of water we used in sewer cleaning this fiscal year so far. And then it's cumulative. So it's going to grow as the 2 months are added, right? So this is, you see this month was actually 85,000, a high number. And this is a nice graphical display of our commitment to maximize recycling. And then if you go to page 8 of 9, you get a historical perspective on our use of recycled water. Before fiscal 1920, we didn't use any. 1920, we started and it was about 17%. In 2021, we increased our recycled water to 45% as we really got all 4 trucks equipped and into a routine of filling up at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, and really, making that part of our business operation. And then we had the prohibition for sewer cleaning that was enacted by Marin Municipal Water in April. So May and June, we really started to maximize. And as you see, since July 1st, we've used recycled water for 93% of our use. And, I was pushing us to try to meet 80%. So I think we exceeded that. We are running into some issues though we actually think there's a bit of a connection with one of our SSOs, which I didn't talk about. I talked about of the 4 during the storm, there were the 2 point repair failures, and the pump station we talked about a little bit, about it not firing up when we needed it the most, right? So we're going to fix that. But the 4th category SSO, category 1 SSO, and this is on page 13, where we get some of the data. And, we have these higher volumes because of the wet weather. It's just, it tracks with that. And even if you look at the statewide SSOs, I believe, region-wide, there were over 50 SSOs in the San Francisco Bay region on October 24th. So our 4 were part of a pool of over 50. And then, statewide, it was greater. But what you see in the statewide data is there's a real blip. There's an anomaly for the last 10 years in the year 2016, 2017, when there was a pretty wet year. That was when Oroville Dam was spilling. You remember that? It was a very dramatic wet season, and it was here too. There were some issues. The overall volume of SSOs really goes up during those wet years, and so you do see that here. With this month, we had 142,000 just for those 2 structural. We had 153,000 total gallons, but they were storm related, and you get, that's just the nature of the overall data set. So it doesn't look good, just as a number, but in the context, it's not too crazy. So I want to walk us down to, through the different causes. Structural, I'm on page 13. Structural were the 2 point repair failures. We had issues with roots, and that was actually the other 4th category one was a root related issue. And then of course you see the power failure down there at the bottom. When we say
how's that root related issue have something to do with MMWD?
Yeah. I'm gonna draw it together for you. So the 4th category SSO, category 1 SSO, was in a high frequency cleaning pipe. We know it's an ongoing root problem, and so we have it on a 3-month schedule. And we look at our cleaning schedule, and in July, it was early July, mid-July, we did our last cleaning. So our maintenance schedule, we need to get out there and clean these roots in mid-October. We were running a couple weeks behind because we're less efficient, because we go back to CMSA to refill some recycled water during the day. And so we were falling behind a little bit on our maintenance schedule, especially the high frequency lines. And so this specific overflow to Almanar we had a work order scheduled on Monday, the 25th of October to do the cleaning. And the storm happened the day before on Sunday, October 24th. So we think there's an unfortunate connection between aggressive recycled water use in our district because of the circumstances where we don't have hydrants in our service area where we can get recycled water. We have to drive all the way back to CMSA. This has a cumulative impact on our schedule, and we believe this overflow and back up into a building is indirectly related to being less able to meet our schedule due to restrictions on potable water use. So we do think there's a connection, and it's a matter of optimizing. You know, we really do want to maximize our recycled water use. We're committed, but if you go a step too far to an absolute restriction on potable water use, it has an unintended consequence on our ability to meet our high frequency maintenance schedule. And this SSO was serious and significant. We're actually going to include this line on the upcoming capital program to deal with the root issue. And, you know, so there is a corrective action we're going to take, but we just think it's worth noting that we actually had, I think, a consequence of, you know, a rigid policy on prohibition of potable use. And, you know, we'll be, you know, we've already documented it here in the metrics report. And if it comes up that our performance is slipping as far as our percent of recycled water use, if it becomes an issue, we will point to this as a reason why we're not going to be meeting the 93% in the future. You know, I suggest, you know, staff would propose to the board that 75% is a great goal for our district, and we intend to do everything we can to meet that goal.
Thank you.
So,
Steve,
go ahead.
I was going to ask you, you showed me a graphic at our meeting. I don't know if you can show that, but I think it's interesting for the board. I found it really fascinating about the one cured in place or repaired pipe and why that failed. But you also showed me where it was. And we talked about at the bottom of that pipe size and perhaps your desire to change the pipe size. Is that something you can easily show and share your screen, or is that for another time?
Yeah, you know, we could take a whirl at it. I have, if Felicia can make me the presenter, I'll see if I can find the application and dazzle you with my, well, I think I might have
Well,
done that.
what I was impressed with is that you brought this up to my attention and you said to me, you know, this is something we need to address at this particular place, you know, but go ahead and I'll let you do this.
Can you see, can everybody see my screen?
I got to zoom in on mine. I got to hit the plus mark to see it big, but yes.
Yeah, is that helping? And then you can see my cursor, right? So
Yep.
where am I in the world? I am
and for each of us, we can put the plus sign and zoom in.
Okay, I'm going to be, don't get seasick. I'm going to be moving around here.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to use the cursor to show you the system. Okay, this is the pipe where the blockage occurred in Greenbrae. So it's that blue pipe there, okay? And if you look at that location, look at how much sewer is upstream, you know, and how many houses. I had Patrick count it, and it's goes all the way up here. It's 152 houses are upstream, and every one of these pipes almost is a 6-inch pipe, including the pipe that was blocked. And so there's about 400-foot elevation difference. This pipe where the blockage, where the point repair failed, is about 50 feet above sea level, 50, and that's the same as the Kent Woodlands elevation where that point repair failed. Exact same elevation. So this is going to go in our technical report, and so I'm just giving you a preview of what our technical report will look like. And so there, the blockage was there, and then the spill occurred this house. And you can see this is an odd configuration where the sewer goes out of the street, it goes into the backyard. These are shallow manholes in the backyard that overflowed due to the blockage, and then it goes back into the street. and the blockage occurred on this pipe here.
And how big is
So-
that pipe?
6 inches diameter. It's too small. It really, at least if it were 8, it would have, you know, an exponentially higher capacity, but also not as vulnerable to root intrusion. So we did have a point repair failure, but actually this was a double whammy spill I haven't even gone into, but this line here had root intrusion that contributed to a second overflow event during this wild storm. So we actually had to return to this area and do another blockage repair. So this is a compounded complex system, but it's undersized. You know, it really wasn't built right in 1948. And it shouldn't have been routed into backyards like this. But hey, this is what we inherited. And so we're looking at is there a capital solution here? Because that house, we had significant damage on the lower floor. And it's covered by the CSRMA and insurance and everything, but it's still something that we want to absolutely avoid. So we're looking at, you know, maybe upsizing the pipe up to that point above where it goes into the backyards, and then go from that point down all the way to Sir Francis Drake, where you get into this connection here, and you know, then there's a question of whether we get into Drake, which was just paved, and upsize that from 8 inches to 10 inches. These are the design considerations we're looking at. So it gives you a feel for why, you know, the rest of our system did pretty well during this historic storm. This place, there is a story behind why we had the failure, and how it's an undersized system. We have a similar situation over in Kentfield. And I'll just quickly show you this. It's at South Ridgewood. Are you familiar where that is? This is Woodland Road, and South Ridgewood comes off here. Right where that green dot is the manhole where there's a smart cover where we saw the overflow happening. It was our first overflow of the storm, and it's at 50 feet above sea level. It had a point repair that failed. We figured that out a week and a half later. And look at the system above it. It goes out to here, includes these houses, and it keeps going and going all the way up here, a higher elevation of 680 feet. And then it has not as many houses as Greenbrae, but it's still about 70 plus houses. And very similar setting where the point repair failed. And yeah, I could, if we really want to, maybe I could share one more thing. I could share a picture of, I'm not sure how to switch applications though, but I could share a picture of what the cross section looked like before the failure. Let's see.
Well, while you're looking for that, I thought this was fascinating. I had this in your office. Two things I want to point out about this is really the district has a good handle on the pipes and the needs and the capital improvement requirements, but also in these particular two point repairs, you had the volume plus the velocity plus the angle. So this water was coming down and slapping that pipe because it was at a sharp angle. And you know, the fact that so shortly after this event, the district knew what to look for and had plans. You know, I think this, you know, we hate to have SSOs, but the more knowledge and the more these smart meters and the more we're using our cameras, the better this district's going to keep improving.
Well, thanks.
Whether
Yes,
Steve has computer skills to show us.
Yeah, I still haven't figured out GoToMeeting. I'm not sure how to switch applications.
Okay.
I almost have to be like fired as the presenter and then rehired, I think.
Oh, you can't just change?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Share something else. Let me try that. Okay, let me try this. Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
If not, Felicia, in the desire to kind of guess, could just kick them out and let them kick back in. And
I think I'm okay. I think I've got a plan here. Let's see.
All right. Would this be a 5-year plan or a 2-year plan or?
I have pictures of the creek thing I could show you. Let's see. I think this is it. It's my email, but bear with me. These are pictures right here of the failure. Can you see them?
I gotta zoom in, but yep.
So that's what a failed point repair looks like. And that's what it looked like before. And so what I was pointing out, see how there's like kind of a little jagged edge on the left there? You know, this was only, this was back, and there's a date on here, I think. It should, well, it says in the email, you know, this is a 2020 picture. And so that's a good before picture. And so you see, you know, from a sewer serviceability standpoint, perfectly fine. This looks great. This is a great point repair. It solved the, you know, the holes in the pipe that were behind it. But if you put a jet of water, and I'm getting a calculation of what pressure might have been in there, but if it was like a water distribution pressure of 100 PSI or 50 PSI, you know, maybe that is vulnerable to getting separated. And so what I was describing earlier was the epoxy, by having a little bit more, it squeezes out past that edge of the fiberglass and creates a smoother transitional zone between the fiberglass and the pipe itself. You know, so this is the clay pipe, and then that's what a point repair looks like when it works. And we learned this is what it looks like when it collapses. And this is the first time the district we've ever seen this. So just came to our attention about a week ago, you know, when the water levels were down far enough for us to take a picture, because we were not able to, and that's when, you know, when we say the investigation's ongoing, that's part of what we mean is we can't get in there to actually see what happened. And then when the water levels came down enough, we were able to take these two pictures. So I think we're going to soon, once we have a little more information on our calculations, we're going to approach the manufacturer and just let them know in a friendly way, you know, that this happened, and we made a modification to the amount of epoxy and see what they think about it, you know. And they may end up making a modification to their recommendations.
I thought both of those were fascinating. I really did. I'm not kidding. I thought it was very important.
Yeah, it's part of our, you know, as an engineer, failure analysis is a big part of the job. And so when we see these things happen, we really feel motivated to get to the bottom of it and make design modifications that prevent these type of occurrences that really have real world impact. You know, it really affected our customers that had to endure the sewer backup experience. It's a worst day of your life kind of experience. So we're really trying to manage that very carefully and thoughtfully.
And again, I don't want to drag this out, Steve, but can you quickly show us pictures of where we removed the abandoned pipe?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think I'm getting better at this. Thanks for bearing with me.
And then train me, because I have meetings and I want to make sure I know how to do this too.
Okay. I'm going to share this. All right. Did that work?
Yes.
All right. What you're looking at here is the left bank before picture. So I'm going to try to set this up where I can do a slideshow. Okay. So this is left bank before. That's the sewer structure there.
So if you, sorry, you stop there. Can you imagine fish trying to jump that when it's low water flow, but there is water flow? That's not good for fishies. That's
right. And there's like a pool down there where the plunge pool forms. So it has this irregular morphology. So let's see. Is this thing working?
Yep.
Okay. Now this is after. So this is right after when we constructed it and we put these boulders in. This is looking from the bridge at before and during construction. See the there was like a slip line in there that was kind of mysterious. And after. Before is right bank. During, this is before looking straight upstream. more construction with Phil. Whoops, I got ahead of myself. After. So this is what it looked like when we said, yeah, the project's done. And then we got a storm. And this is the day after the storm. And so Phoenix Lake filled up. It was practically empty. It filled and overflowed. And this is what a storm flow looks like in that area. So you don't see a riffle. And another storm flow picture. You know, this is fully ripping through there. And we're thinking, oh gosh, did they wash away our new restoration? It's like, oh my goodness, did they just like blow it out? Are all those cool rocks gone? Nope, there it is. This is 2 days later. And look at our beautiful riffle. You know, this is located where the sewer used to be here, and it used to be a little plunge pool. Now we designed it right, you know, and so after it got blown out by the storm, it's still there because it was well designed and keyed in.
And small fish going upstream hide behind those rocks for breaks.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the slideshow.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve. All of that information was great. I appreciate it. I'm sorry to the board we kept a little bit late, but I thought those were really interesting things to see, and I wanted to show them to you and to the public. Any comments from the
Friends of the Corte Madera Creek are going to use this picture in their Creekside Chronicles newsletter this month, and have a quick blurb on Ross Valley Sanitary District, you know, doing their part to improve fish habitat. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much. Comments from the board? Anybody? Tom? Nope. Michael says no. Pam, I can't see everybody because I've got the picture up. Pam or Mary? Well, with that, thank you very much. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Our next regular board meeting is on December 15th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via GoToMeeting. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, staff, board members.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to present. Appreciate it.